This is where you need to edit this out, Scott.
This holy moment has been brought to you by the Plastic Posse podcast.
Is that Massachusetts? M.A.? I just get these wrong. M.A.M.S. M.O. M.I. There's a lot of M words.
I'm going to pause for 1 second. Does anyone else hear that?
John, are you 3D printing something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can
I was like,
I wasn't going to comment.
I knew something. I was like, is there a printer going?
No, you don't have to.
We're going to mess up his 20-hour print in the 17th hour.
Man,
it's literally a 20-hour print, and I have 3 hours to go.
No, dude,
leave it going. Leave it going.
No. Sorry. All right, you know what? I'll just 3D print some hefty brackets out of white, PTE and PLA. Sorry, and
first world problems when you're interviewing a modeler. You're like, man, are you 3D printing something? Come on.
Welcome to episode 75, listeners. We're so excited to come back to you after the IPMS Nationals in San Marcos, Texas. We're super excited to talk to you about the event, who we met, and all the great times that were had, and what we look forward to in 2024. But before we get to that, I want to introduce my co-host for today. And with that, I have Scott, Doug, Grant, special guests, Jim, Aaron, and Mike. So how is everybody doing? And I'll start with our first guest, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Doing good, recovering from the trip, and kind of excited to get working on something.
Outstanding. I think that'll be a common theme across everyone today. Next, we're going to go over to Aaron, who is in a BMW, just hanging out on the side of the road. He cares about the Plastic Posse that much. He pulled over during his daily routine to Kroger and decided to join us for this episode. So, Aaron, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Sean. It's hard to believe it's already been a week since NATS, and it's just still on that high from visiting all you guys and visiting all our friends, and some great modeling, great vendor room, great company. So sat down this morning before I went out to run errands and build a little bit on a model, and that felt good too. So
outstanding. Couldn't agree more. And our last guest coming to us because he's been exiled from the Plastic Model Mojo. We have Mr. Jim Bates, Scale Canadian TV from the Pacific Northwest. How are you today, sir?
I'm finally caught up on my sleep.
That's another common theme. How about the everything make it back in one piece? All the purchases.
I did good. I've actually already been got my clean slate build almost ready for primer. So I'm not sure who this guy is in my head right now, but he's building models and it's awesome.
Love it. I do think you left one thing in Texas, and coincidentally, we discovered what it was while we started recording.
So this morning when I woke up, I remembered that Kentucky Dave handed me headphones because he objects I never record with headphones. And he gave them to me. And then I don't remember where they went afterwards. And apparently after 3 bourbons at the Moj room, I moved to the Posse room, where I then had 3 more drinks, and apparently left them there. And they are being used by my co-host today, Nukeman Mike. So I'm glad they found a good home. I'm just a fool.
I mean, they are being used for the purpose in which they were given to you for. So I think that's a win, maybe just not on the person that Dave assumed would be wearing them.
Well, and Mike does make them look good. I mean, you have to admit.
Oh, killer. If only our listeners could see it. So with that, I'm going to go over to Grant, a little bit south, but staying on the West Coast. Sir, how are you today? What is going on in SoCal?
Not much. I'm caught up with sleep, caught up with work after a week. I just wonder if Mike's part of the Moj now because he has the headphones on. But other than that, I started working on a 1/35 scale Croat. So I'm happy.
Awesome. I was planning on buying one of those, and Brian Krieger said, oh yeah, let's go on a group order since they're out. And then he went back to the vendor room and promptly bought the last one. So I don't know how to take that one. I'm still recovering, but thanks, BK.
Yeah, I think that was his plan. I think they just got you.
Savaged me. That's fine. So Doug, how's it going over in Utah?
Utah is very good. It's been about 20 degrees cooler than San Marcos was and a lot less humidity. So it feels wonderful. Happy to be home, happy to sleep in my own bed again, and actually have set up a little queue for what I want to finish on the bench. And the first kit I'm going to do is my bounce back build.
That sounds great. So lastly, but certainly not least, our head honcho, Scott, your neighbor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, JB. Got surrounded again by my friends, and we're definitely going to be talking about that. But it's always amazing to me how fast that these nationals come and how quickly they get there. They almost kind of take you by surprise, but that can't even compare, even a little bit to how fast they go. We're up at 7 a.m. and we're going till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we're getting up and doing it again. And we'll get into that here in the show. But before we get started on all the topics that we're going to cover, I just want to say to JB, to Rob Booth, to Len, to Stan, to the team at San Marcos, job well done, man. I just fantastic, from the opening bell to the tours, to the seminars, to the mariachi bands, to broadcasting the IPMS awards ceremony for the very first time on social media. It was just fantastic, and just job well done. Had a blast.
Yeah, certainly I echo those sentiments. The Texas team, 10 out of 10 all the way around. And we'll discuss the show in depth. I'll just finish this off. I'm doing well. I got the new SDKF said 251, the 1/16th one, and I've been working on that since the Nats, making really good progress on that. Fantastic hit. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But the show, as Scott and everyone else has mentioned, has been truly great. We're starting to recharge our batteries, I think, based on the lack of sleep, and maybe some of us are still feeling a little under the weather. And as you notice, we are missing Jensen today. Unfortunately, he caught the bug in Texas and has stepped out on this episode along with others. So if you're at the show, just remember, if you're not feeling well, give it a little test, and then just if you need to, stay home and take it easy. That's the most important thing, is your health. Additionally, we're missing TJ. He's got some personal commitments, and that's it's really great that he's going to some pretty cool things with his kids. And then lastly, we'll have Grizz and Jackson on at some point as well to just kind of give a recap and talk about what's up next for them. So with that, it goes without saying, our first topic today is going to be the Nats. We've all discussed it up front, but I think there's some really big topics during the show that we just really want to emphasize, because the show is a lot more than the contest, a lot more than the vendors. It's about the people that are next to you at the show or online. I think what we saw was an incredible amount of socialization, not only in the walls of the embassy suites in the event center, but online as well, and certainly post Nats as well. So I think we need to jump into that. But before I jump into that, I do want to note, and I want to make it clear that, the show was hosted by a local chapter, that is the IPMS Alamo Squadron. And that was led by, the folks that we mentioned, Len, Rob, Stan, Tom Moon, and a few other folks that really, just did a bang up job. And I want to be sure to note that, because the IPMS USA entrusts the national convention to a host chapter, and the Texas team knocked it out of the park. I think what it's also critical to talk about is that the contest is decoupled from not only the host chapter, but the national chapter as well, the national USA chapter, that is. So I want to make those distinctions. So when you think about the show, the convention, that was the Texas team. When you think about the contest, that was another group of individuals associated with IPMS. I just want to note that, because the show, the convention itself, was absolutely unbelievable. So much fun. I call it the Texas standard, something that all following shows will be benchmarked off of. And we learned so much, a lot of positive things, and some good opportunities. So I want to note that if you have comments on the show, there will be a feedback going out soon to all registered attendees. I encourage you to not only fill out the survey, but share your feedback. Any and all words towards the show will be read and will be put into a document to understand how can we make the show better and increase that attendee experience. So with that formality out of the way, I'm going to kick it over to Scott to talk about literally everything we've done at the show, inside the convention and out. We have some amazing people we want to highlight, some great things that we had the opportunity to experience. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Yeah, thanks, John. Really, really excited to talk with this group about our experiences and appreciate those things that you just mentioned. Things have gotten a little bit heated on social media. We're going to spend a little time on that later in the show, but we don't want to focus on it because, for every wart, there was, 10 other great things. Also, later in the episode, we're really, really excited. We had a chance, John, Grant, and I had a chance to sit down and have an incredible conversation with John Chung, aka Scale Scriber. It was really less of an interview and more of just a running conversation. I think it was one of our most interesting conversations we've had to date. So make sure you stick around in the episode for that. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing about John's passion and what he puts into his models. Okay, so man, where do we start? We had a chance to get together as friends. All of us were there. All the posse were there. We did have some friends that were missing, which we'll talk about later. But it's great when we get a chance to all get together. Of course, Jensen came over from the UK, and that was great. You know, we had sort of people converging from all over the US, and once we got there, it was wall to wall. So I want to start with a couple things. First of all, for our posse Patreons and friends, our good friend Matt Schaefer put together just an amazing activity. We all went to Black's Barbecue and weren't sure how that was going to go, but I'm going to open it up to the group here. But we had over 50 people at that event. It was done for our posse Patreons, the Outriders, who do such a great job supporting us, and then also some friends of the posse. Absolute blast. Our good friend Andy Klein from Andy's Hobby Headquarters was a celebrity. He came in, blew through there, said hi to everybody. Man, just amazing. Really, really good food. Again, Matt Schaefer, mediocre middle-aged modeler on Facebook. Thank you so much for kind of taking the lead on putting that together. But I was kind of blown away by the amount of people.
Yeah, I agree. It was so much fun. I was like a little anxious like you were, Scott, and I walked in and we were just a little bit late because I had to pick up Rick Lawler, who's there, and Jose, who showed up from Custom Dynamics. You know, it was fun. I walk in and I'm like, oh my God, is there enough room for everybody? And it was a fun time. And then Andy's little in and out, cheering session was great. But it was just such a fun time to sit down and eat some really good barbecue with some people. I had a great time.
I think the thing that struck me was, not everyone obviously knew each other. I mean, there's 50-some people in the room, but it was a roar of the crowd the whole time. I mean, everyone's just sitting there talking and laughing and enjoying each other's company and had a blast. I don't think there was ever a time where it was very quiet in there. And it went by, quite frankly, I thought very fast because I think it was just so enjoyable. Everyone just got caught up in the moment and it was a good time. So, and I'll have to call out thanks to Scott and the crew. And Scott had stood up and thanked everyone for coming. And then he was like, oh, well, it's somebody's birthday. And I was sitting there not thinking about it because it was my birthday in about 4 days. I'm like, I wonder whose birthday it is. That's kind of neat. Then, of course, it was my birthday they were singing for. So thanks for that. That was kind of a surprise. I might have said inappropriate words, but it was all in good fun. I did enjoy it. So I don't think I've ever had 50 people sing me happy birthday before. So that was cool.
One of my favorite moments was your face because, for the listeners at home, we brought a piece of cake over, and we were talking. We said, hey, it's somebody's birthday. Aaron's face was like, oh, yeah, cool. Whose birthday is it? And as it slowly dawned on him what was actually happening, that facial expression just changed, to, oh, you jerk.
Yeah, that look he gave me, Scott, was hilarious.
I was excited because I'm like, oh, we're all getting dessert. And then Aaron was the only one. And I was like, damn it. So
actually, I have two comments about the barbecue. The first one being I'm sitting in this room with 50 of my friends. And I realized outside of Dave Knights, who I knew very well, and Mike Basquiat, who I knew a little bit from the Moj, I didn't know most of you 6 years ago. And that's amazing. But the other amazing thing is I have a friend that I've been sending as we gather at Posse. I tend to send a photo of our gatherings. And the comment was made, every time you send a photo, there's more people in it. And I think that's the best part. And we had 50 people. So, Commies Fest first year, it's like 8. And then the Nats, it's a few more. And then Commies Fest, it's a few more. And now we had 50. And that was just awesome.
I've got a question. Was it the heat or was it the meat? Where were the sweats coming from? Because I had the meat sweats pretty bad. I mean, barbecue 3 times on that trip, and that Black's dinner was amazing.
Yeah. I think it was a little both for me. It was a little humid and a little too much meat.
Also, Scott, I got to highlight, I did appreciate Andy from Andy's Hobby Headquarters popping in to say hi to us. I thought that was pretty cool, too.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a celebrity, walked in the room and, everyone's like, oh, it's Andy. So, yeah, no, it was great. And he had some friends and family with him. And yeah, that was fantastic. That'll continue to be a theme. We also had a great get together just before the contest. A lot of us judged, some of us didn't. And, John had himself a pretty swanky, hospitality suite for the posse. So we brought in 15, 20 pizzas and fed everybody, John?
Yeah, 15 pizzas. I think it probably weighed 40 pounds. When I called up Costco. So by the way, listeners, if you ever want cheap pizzas, find your nearest Costco. Cheap, easy to order, and they're really good and can feed literally an army. Made the order. Me, TJ, and Aaron went out to get it. And when we showed up, the lady's like, "You ordered 15?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh." And the other lady fortunately knew our order, and Aaron just literally pushed a cart into the kitchen and they loaded it up. But it was great. And, that's the most important thing. When we look at these events, it's the social hang, and being able to facilitate that from our supporters is amazing. We're so fortunate, and the door was open to everyone. We posted online, room 201, hospitality suite. If you're in the building, stop by. And that was honestly the way throughout the weekend. I remember after we judged, probably around 11 o'clock, folks stopped by and literally just knocked on the door, came in and stayed till 2 or 3 in the morning. And just some really good, solid conversations around, scale modeling, the love for the hobby, and to be honest, the love for each other. So room 201 was bumping every day. Super grateful to be given that opportunity. Shout out to Len. He's like, "I know you're going to be hosting people. So this room is hooked up for you." I'm like, "Dang, man, thanks." And sure enough, it was, and became the epicenter for the posse.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We had, we had the Moj in there. We had all kinds of friends. We had Aussies. We had Canadians. We had Nukemans. We had all the bases covered. It was great, and lots of fun. And it was great having pizza with everybody. So a really, really good time there. As John said, a lot of great conversations. We sat there with Bruce one night, plotted some coups and revolutions and takeovers. And then we had other moments. One of them I want to highlight, call out. One of our good friends, John Everett, just came in and just made an unbelievable presentation. He had actually handcrafted 1-to-1 scale lightsaber hilts, that he had made, and each one of the lightsabers he had made for each of us, in the group. And he had put in a lot of thought into it and kind of custom made that for each one of us. And if you guys get a chance on our Facebook page, you can see John's got a photo of kind of that moment. But, John, wherever he goes, he puts smiles on people's faces, whether it's his Frogman Mac entry that he had, or his incredible 1-to-1 scale dinosaurs, his poetry. He loves to, you got to watch him, or, he'll drop some Shakespeare on you, but wherever he goes, John just puts smiles on people's faces. And that was truly one of those moments.
He is such the modeling renaissance man.
He is. I mean, the first day, it was Tuesday night, I think, when I met Doug in the lobby. He actually had a pile of maps of England, and he was planning his next hike. And this is in the middle of he's just one of those guys that makes everything so much fun. And, and I want to throw I don't know if I should do this yet, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to throw a big thank you out to Craig Flynn from flying all the way from Australia to come see us and win Mr. International Champion now. Mr. International Champion. He is such a great guy. I had such a fun time sitting down and talking to him, even though he has a weird accent. You want to see some of his work, it's all over the internet. Please check him out. He had a little bit of a rough time getting home because flights got canceled, but, he's home safe with his family now. But, Craig, I really appreciate you doing everything for us and coming all the way out here to see us.
I totally agree. I loved hanging out with Craig. He came kind of it was a risk. He said he could afford it and he had the time, but he didn't know how it was going to go. He took the Sam Dwyer's advice to do it. Sam was the one that kind of finally pushed him to the point, and his wife encouraged it. So thanks to her as well. We had a blast with you, man.
Yeah, I just want to echo that as well. Without Sam in San Marcos, we had an Australia-shaped hole in our heart. And I think we can all agree that Craig easily filled that. And, dare I say, we're very hopeful that we see both Sam and Craig again in Madison. I think that'd be great. Both are extreme gentlemen. And I just loved hanging out with Craig. Super nice guy. I remember seeing him on Saturday and he just looked completely wiped. I don't know if he truly understood what he was signing up for when he came to San Marcos, but I think the posse definitely got him his steps and lack of sleep. So he's probably down there hibernating in the lower hemisphere. But yeah, again, Craig, thanks so much for coming. Your spirit, your joy for the hobby, and hey, you took a risk, and we hope it turned out great, because we loved seeing you, hanging out with you, and you're part of the posse, man. So we got to get him on. We got to get him to talk to us and give a recap for his time in Texas.
Yeah, I think we need to grab Craig and the Sam and get them on together. So we'll get to work on that. But yeah, as soon as we got to Austin, reached out to Craig and took him over to Lionheart with us. We had dinner with Dukes and took us to an unbelievable burger place. I mean, just unbelievable. And yeah, the whole time he was just a part of things. It was great having him over. So other people that I wanted to highlight too, and throw this open to the group. Hanging out with the Moj is always a lot of fun. Mark Bradley, the voice of Bob, Rick Lawler, Joan and Barry Biediger, of course, the Knoffels, Andy Klein. He's such a gentleman, allowing us to kind of be a part of his huge announcements for his new 1/16 scale kits. That was fantastic. George and Fred, Tamiya USA, and then some people I want to kind of highlight, and then I'll turn it over to JB so he can do the same thing. But first of all, Charlie Schaefer, it's great to see you again, man. You keep building. We love hanging out with you. Of course, Hank Knoffel. I think he's like our spiritual leader. I mean, we all look to him. He gets another win at nationals. Just really, really great. He's just a part of everything that we do at these events. And then I made a new friend, and I just want to say hi. John Colasante brought his daughter Lucy to the show. She was a doll. She took the time a couple different times to talk to me, tell me about going horseback riding, and just really, really enjoyed talking to her. So hi, Lucy. Thanks for talking to us. And we got a little something headed your way. Hopefully you like it. But it was awesome to meet her. And, she's brave to come hang out with all us old guys at an IPMS show. So I hope she had a great time. So JB, anybody that you want to shout out that you ran into?
Yeah, there's certainly plenty. As you mentioned, got to mention Steve Munsell, Chris and his dad, McLean's. You said Mark and Jamie. We got Matt Johnson, who was a constant fixture. Tim Campbell stopped by a lot. Really enjoyed getting to know him for the first time. Our great friend Andy Taylor as well. Ken Childress, I think that's a major highlight. I've admired Ken's work for a very long time, and it's a privilege to actually have a piece come home with me. He was so kind to give me his welder, which is an amazing little piece. I'll get some pictures up online. He did not need to do that. And if anything, I regret not having the opportunity to shake his hand and maybe even give him a hug before taking off. I didn't get a chance to when he had to leave a little bit early. As you mentioned, Bruce, my Panzer Gray is blue. He was a constant fixture as well in the room. Loved hanging out with him. Derek Post. Got to give a shout out to Lynn. He was a gentleman that stopped by a couple times, said hi, and he contributed to our group build. So super thankful for Lynn, JC, voice of Bob, Jose, Custom Dioramics, Evan, as you mentioned. I think it goes without saying the geeks as well. Darren, Whitey, Scott. I should say Darren, Scott, Samo,
and Frill.
Without Whitey. That's what I was going to say is we missed Whitey there. El Presidente, Tim.
Yep.
He joined us. Super, super grateful to have him in, our company. He's just unbelievable guy, and really happy that he's going to be a returning, host on the Geek. So that's great. Also got to give a shout out to Justin Lentz, who basically just won all of aircraft. I was sitting next to him at the awards ceremony. I think I heard his name more than literally everyone's. And when he walked out, he looked like one of those North Korean generals with all the medals.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Justin Lentz.
Earlier in the day, Justin had been said, I don't really care about these things, but it would be nice to take home, a trophy. And I'm sitting in the back helping with the broadcast, and he wins his first one. I message him, hey, good job, man. And then again, and then finally I just texted him and said, dude, settle down, man.
Yeah, I sat at the table with him and another one, Gabe Pincelli, Gabe, and Scott Samo. I feel like their names were rotated during the jet categories, and it was cool sitting at the table, seeing them flip positions, and just a great time. And I'm thankful for Darren saving me a seat too at the award ceremony. A few other folks, obviously Martin Drayton, Paul Wheeler, great gentleman, longtime supporter of the posse, posts on the group. Really grateful to sit next to him at the dinner. Paul Gloucester made the trip over as well, and he cleaned up in the aircraft category, if I recall. Obviously, Josh, one person we need to mention, David Brian Bridges. First time I've ever seen his work in person. Also, really nice to get to know him. I wish I could have spent more time with him. The Lovewells, Chris and Rione. I mean, they brought Hawaii treats to room 201. How can you not?
They are the best.
Literally the best.
I
souls.
swear to God, I'm going to steal his wife. I swear she is the sweetest woman known to man.
Very, very nice. And then also I want to highlight BJ DeBecker as well. BJ is a neighbor. I was so thankful to see him there, but also unfortunately UPS did not abide, and he didn't get any of his products there, which was unfortunate. It just sucked, to be honest. So he had an empty table, but I think he enjoyed himself hanging out with us and the other folks there. It was just really good to see him. And lastly, I'd like to thank Rob Adams. He came down from Canada and met up with BJ in Colorado Springs, and they made the trek over to San Marcos. I was hoping to see him before they went down, and unfortunately I got called away to work to the desert, but that's okay. Super, again, his first Nats, I think, and certainly not his last. I think he's already planning the other one. So that's my list. I'm sure there's a lot more. My biggest regret is not spending more quality time with all of them. With that, I'll kick it over to Grant.
We pretty much named all of them. There's a few I'd like to mention myself. I met Douglas Cohen, who was there starting Friday, which was, in my opinion, one of the outstanding figure painters, designers out there. It was a real honor to meet him. I want to say that the Bedigers were out there. Joan and Barry were there. That was really nice to sit down and have breakfast with them a couple of days. I had some great times. We talked about Craig. Craig's a great guy. Babel Young from California came out, won another Best of Sci-Fi with another beautiful sci-fi model, another great build. And there's just a thousand. If I miss your name, I'm so sorry. I actually got to sit down most of the time next to Mike, the Nukeman, and watch him work. And that was very impressive to me, watching the way he can sculpt and do any things. And he's got a really cool story about some foam that was left on for him. He needs to tell everybody when he gets done. We give him a chance to talk. But, with Steve Munsell and everybody else, it was just a fun time. I had a great time with a whole bunch of people, and I don't know if there's any more to add, but I'm just going to pass it on to whoever's next.
Well, I'll jump in. The first thing is I want to go back to something we talked about later, and maybe this is me being an estate planning attorney, but Hank better be crazy successful, because the amount of kits he's going to inherit when we're all gone is going to be ridiculous. He's going to need a pole barn just to keep all our kits. The two other shout outs, a lot of people were mentioned, but I've got a shout out to Scale Model Doc for picking me up in the airport, taking me to the Fredericksburg Museum, and not leaving me in a tub full of ice with my kidneys removed. So thank you, Jonathan. And then the most exciting part of the trip was I didn't have a way to get back to the airport on Sunday. And I got this Uber. The guy's name was Grant Mayberry. You might have heard of him. And he took Rick Lawler and Doug and I to the airport. And at one point we were lost. I swear I saw the guy with the leather face with the chainsaw chasing after us. And then we got attacked by this, I swear it was 8 feet tall armadillo. So I thought that our Uber driver, number one, good music, good company, fights armadillos well, 5 stars.
That wasn't my fault. That was Wave. If you can ask, Jim there, he was following me on his, and it was totally the wrong directions, but it was my fault. But
yeah, Doug had this with his Google Maps because our Waze was trying to send us out into the middle of Texas Hill Country. It was terrible.
Oh, it took you to the airport, just the wrong side of the airport.
Exactly.
Yeah, the serial killer side of the airport. Yeah, we were on the wrong side.
Well, Doug, who do you have to shout out?
Oh, well, I really enjoyed meeting and hanging out with Mike Gordy was there. I want to thank Greg James for walking the contest room with me. We shot the breeze quite a bit, got to know him a lot more. And I want to say something else about Bobble Young. I rarely get starstruck, but the dude's a rock star. When you can scratch build a Rebel blockade runner, the Tantive 4, as beautifully as he did, and he walks into me in the contest room, smiles and shakes my hand, and knows who I am. He says, "You're Doug, right? You're the guy that likes snakes." Well, honestly, I've met him once, and it was with the other guys. So I was shocked that he even would recognize me. it was a little bit, it was quite a feeling to have someone that I put on this pedestal, because it's Star Wars. He does Star Wars. He does it beautifully. He does it scratch built, and he knew me, and I was a bit blown away by it.
He's fantastic, and I know we're forgetting so many people, but
we're sorry.
Yeah, but Nukeman, I mean, one of the people we haven't talked about enough is Steve Munsell. I mean, the guy that literally knows everybody the second that that he meets them. But who are some people you want to shout out?
Well, of course, Steve is definitely, hanging out at his booth was awesome, and being able to work with the foam. I got a nice period of time to sit down and talk during judging with Jose and Rick Lawler and Doug, and we spent a nice time just discussing things and talking and just general BSing. It was very, very cool. I think one of the things that stands out to me is just there were so many people coming up and talking to me with working with the foam, and it was just so cool to meet people and pass on some of the stuff that I do, which people are like, that looks really hard, and it's not. All you got to do is get in there and try. And but it was very, very nice hanging out with you guys at your booth, and guys from Scale Colors behind, and just talking to everybody. It was amazing.
Aaron, what about you? It was awesome having you there. We weren't sure you were going to join us, and man, we were stoked you were able to join us, hang out with us. Who are some people that you met you want to shout out?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And I was so happy to be there. And I got to thank the posse for their kindness and generosity in helping me make that happen. So thanks to all of you guys for your support. I think, most of the names have been mentioned already, but, a couple just to highlight again, Steve Munsell and Value Gear. It was funny because I purchased a few items from him, and it billed as advertised that I had to be the one to do reverse negotiation. I think I had 2 items, and it was like $10. He's like, well, that's not enough stuff for $10. Go get a few more things. I was like, okay. So that was fun. But, and then I know Bruce and JB and I were on a judging team together. And Bruce and JB were standing there, and I think it was David Hobbs walked by, and he kind of stopped. He turned around and he goes, Panzer Gray and Panzer Blue together. How are the two of you going to do? Does that cancel each other out? So that was kind of funny. But the one name I want to bring up, JB touched on it briefly, but somebody I met out in Omaha, and I was really looking forward to meeting again, was Martin Drayton. And it's just because his enthusiasm and his smile was so infectious and just so great to run into him again. And he just brings such positive vibes to everyone around him. So I was thrilled to be able to have some time to chat with him again this year. But just seeing all of you guys again, I can't wait till the next opportunity we have to all get together.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. We're forgetting, Brian Krieger, on and on and on. We're just, Cameron, Corliss. I mean, just so many people, so many friends, and, we appreciated, interacting with all of you. It was great. Let's kind of I'd like to touch on the seminars, and, maybe hit my buddy JB up on this to kind of walk through them. But I thought the seminar slate that John put together was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't go to all of them. I wanted to. I literally wanted to go to every one of them, but there just isn't time to do that. But JB, maybe run down some of the highlights for you and some of the seminars that you guys put together.
Yeah, so I want to say I got to thank everyone that presented, their flexibility, and also their basic, maybe the respect is a strong word, but the respect for their fellow seminar presenters. I popped my head in and out. I tried to on almost every one. Friday was a difficult day. I didn't get a chance to do that. But from what I understand, everybody played by the rules in terms of timing and changeover. And I've heard nothing but really great things. So super grateful for that. Some of the seminars that stuck out in my mind, I heard great things about your 3D printing seminar, Grant and Scott. So super thankful for that. And then I'll highlight some that I went to, and then I'd ask, if anybody else on the line here to highlight them. But Three stuck out in my mind. I'll touch on Brian Krieger first off on Mac. I think we can all agree that seminar honestly could be a book, because the knowledge that he shared on the lineage and how Mac came to be where it is today, specific vehicles and how Co did it, you cannot find that anywhere else. You can find it probably in a Japanese books. I say books because they're pieced together, but a contiguous story on the history and development and honestly kind of future of Mac, scale modeling of Mac. Brian's seminar knocked it out of the park. I don't know if I don't think my co-host will disagree. What are your thoughts, all?
I was just going to say, I can speak up and say that, yeah, I learned more. I mean, I've been building Mac, just for a couple of years now, but I really know nothing about the backstory. And so I was anxiously looking forward to that seminar, just kind of understand from one of the truly subject matter experts on it, especially, JB, you kind of touched on it in the English language. It's just not easy to find. So I learned a lot in that time. It was great for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that the fact that, 99% of that history is all Japanese, and he was able to dig it out and find it. And, he's been doing this a long time too. And he's very dedicated to Mac, McElhaney Krieger, very, very dedicated. It makes a guy like me, it clears up a lot of things. And it was just a very informative, detailed presentation, which I'd like to get one day so we could post it for everybody to see. Maybe a slideshow or his slide deck would be great. But, him and Lincoln Wright also do great jobs of bringing it to the English speaking world. They're great ambassadors, but his demo, his show, it was great. There's nothing wrong.
Other seminars I'd like to highlight, Martin Drayton. We had the privilege of sitting in the back of his, and we didn't throw any tomatoes. We had him armed and ready, but major shout out to him. He took a risk. We talk about risk taking. It's not only on the contest table, but also supporting the show. Martin was kind enough to say yes to presenting a seminar, and he had a full house, and I think he did fantastic. I think he has a lot of cool lessons learned, and he's only going to make it better next year. And I always love talking to him. Like we've mentioned here, his passion, his tenacity is something that we can all admire. And just it's great to see a new name on the seminar list. And his work was there, and all stars. I can't think of anything else to say other than that with him.
I'm frustrated I missed his, but I want to give him a total shout out because I see it's already on YouTube. And the seminar I want to highlight is the Panzermeister, Evan McCollum. I ran into him before his seminar, and he looked like he was about to melt down, and then he just rocked it. And I know that was taped and will show up on YouTube as well. And in the past, what always frustrated me is there's so much going on. If you miss a seminar, you've missed it. And I'm loving that guys are taping their seminars and putting them up so that we can watch them later, because one of my biggest disappointments of the show was missing Martin's seminar, but now I get to watch it. And, there's generally, when you talk about armor weathering and armor painting seminars at the Nats, usually the winner is some guy named JB. I'm sorry, JB. I think this year the Panzermeister knocked it out of the park. So you got some competition now, my friend.
No, man, I love it. I'm so happy that Evan said yes as well. I've admired his work online for years, and super thankful that someone not only of his skill set, but dare I say, he's just a younger guy. And that's what we need more of. We need to empower younger modelers to come in and share their skills, share their perspective, and really teach us how it's done. And like you mentioned, bringing in technology, having the how I'm looking for the right word here, having the foresight to record it and share it. That does IPMS a major favor. And we have to be extremely grateful to people like him and Martin for taking that initiative, not only sharing their content, but highlighting what the IPMS Nationals can provide to other people. In my mind, the seminars are a fantastic touch point where you get to learn more than probably you can anywhere else. And I say seminars at other shows as well. I don't want to make it sound like, the IPMS Nationals only. You look at seminars and workshops at international shows, those are probably the most valuable piece if you're looking to up your game in scale modeling. So I have to give credit to those folks. And then I also want to give credit to the European shows that have shown that you can have workshops that are paid with high-class modelers like Rick Lawler. To be honest, it was an experiment this year. We'd never really done anything like that before. Yes, there's been airbrushing seminars in the past, but to truly have an awesome scale modeler dedicate his time all day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, teach classes that were sold out, really sets a new kind of course for IPMS. And what else can we do? Who else can we bring in? Rick was the first, but certainly not the last. And I have to thank Scale Model Challenge for that kind of model where they have world-renowned artists come and teach classes, and just super thankful that it worked out, and it will not be the last. I know the boys in Madison have a stellar location to host more than what we had in Texas. I do want to highlight the Texas facility was small. There's no denying that. But I think what we'll learn is, Texas was planned back in 2018, 2019. It's a different world in IPMS today. We are 5 years on and many more members, much more publicity around the show. And what you'll see in Madison is where we truly have a facility that is matched with the demand. I've tangented. I want to come back. I want to highlight the Model Geeks as well. Super thankful for Scott and Darren and the boys for putting on the TPS and teaching that again. And then also, I was not a part of it, unfortunately, but I know Doug and Grant showed up. I think they had a great time with the Scale Model Podcast Roundup.
Well, we have a blank space here. Well, we're talking about leveraging technology. I got to say, hey, it was great for the people who couldn't attend. Shout out to Eric Brubaker to be able to watch the awards ceremony thanks to a certain podcaster on this call. So thinking outside the box again, Scott, that was awesome that you guys broadcast that.
Well, I'm going to give Rob Booth the credit for that. I just tried to help make it happen. So Rob really gets the credit for that. Anyway, Doug, Grant, how did the podcaster roundup go? I wasn't able to attend either. Was it a lot of fun?
It was. It was really interesting because I knew it started at 3:30, and I ran into you at 3:30. I said, "The roundup's now." He's like, "Yeah, it's you and Grant." And I said, "Oh, I don't remember. I didn't get that memo, and I missed it. It's in the chat. I missed it, so I had to run over there. Got there a minute late and sat in on it. But it was a lot of fun. And basically, all it was with Bob Bear, the voice of Bob, doing the emceeing. It was just an open forum for people to ask questions to those of us who were there representing 5 podcasts were represented. So it went really, really well.
Yeah, I have to agree. I really like the format where basically, Bob just handed it over to the audience and they just started asking questions. And I think that's the best way to do that. They got there was a lot of funny stuff. There was a lot of, talking about all different kinds of the aspects of it, what we think is needed, what is needed in the future, how it started, how we started in the podcasting. It was fun. It was a fast 45 minutes, just put it that way. Very fast. And, me and Doug and all the others had a great time. Plus we got some really cool pictures out of it, some hand drawings that they did for us. So those turned out really cool.
John, I know you got to reconnect with Mig Jimenez. And I think, Mike, you got to connect with Mig as well. What was it like meeting Mig? I ran into him in the elevator a couple times, but he was on the phone. So how was it, guys?
Oh, it was great. I hadn't seen Mig in person for almost 20 years. I had the opportunity to meet him back in 2004 at the IPMS Nationals in Hard to Grace, Maryland. And during that time, my dad took a picture of him and we recreated it in San Marcos. I think he's aged better than me, but it was really good. He's super nice, and it was just great to reconnect and bond over the common language of scale modeling. And I Mike and I spent a few minutes with him chatting, and certainly I look forward to seeing him again at SMC. But he was incredibly grateful, and he posted a little bit online about having the opportunity to speak at the IPMS Nationals. He also noted it was the first time he gave a seminar without actually hands-on demonstration, so that was new for him. But his thing was widely attended and publicized. And Mike, how'd you feel?
Mig was just super gracious and, very seemed humble, just talking. And, as a person to person and there with John, it was just really, really neat to meet him and talk on that level. Talk about some of the stuff that is going on. And he kind of led into that, he would like to start traveling a little more and doing more shows and doing what basically he did at Nationals. So that's very encouraging, and just the level he was on, it was really, really cool.
I'll also mention another story with Mig. So on Friday night, the kids, we like to call them Jensen, Jackson, and Grizz. They departed the venue and went bowling, and they sent us a picture of them with Mig. And they're like, we're bowling with Mig. And we're all like, oh man, what? How did you get so lucky? And we're all thinking like, oh, they're just bowling, having a great time. So, they get back and we start talking to them. They're like, how was bowling with Mig? Oh, it was great, this and that. And how was it? Well, he was in the lane next to us. We're like, oh, okay. Well, that's still cool. Learn a little bit more about the story. Suddenly he's a few lanes down and then ends up being on the end row of the bowling alley. So, I appreciate the facade they put on, but I just found it funny where, it's almost talking about the fish you caught and how big it is. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. In this case, it went the opposite way for them. So jokes aside, super happy that they got a chance to meet him. I think they were stoked. I think Mig was stoked too. He's super gregarious, and it was just a really cool picture and a cool story that it's just funny how it evolved to them. At least they were in the same building, I say. So that's how I look at it.
Same zip code, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Just going back to the seminars I was able to go to. The one that you, JB, that you did with TJ and Jensen on airbrushing was great. Always excited to hear more from you guys and see photos of what your work looks like. I miss Brian's, unfortunately. I do want to shout out again Martin Drayton. He did a great job. What's awesome is we met Martin, even though he's right here in Utah with Doug and I. We actually met him in Vegas at the IPMS Nationals, and he was kind of like, well, I wasn't really sure about this. And then 2 years later, he's not only presenting a seminar, he's presenting a seminar that sold out. I mean, packed house, and it was great. I mean, really, really learned a lot from that. And glad that you guys did the podcast roundup. Sorry, I missed that one. That sounded really cool. One thing I want to talk about before we kind of move on this is the seminar that we did with Rick and kind of his approach. Rick is really generous. We all know the quality of his work, but he did the seminar, and we got some seats, and Aaron won a contest to get a ticket to go to that as well. There were other people in them, like JB said, all sold out. But Rick didn't just get up there and lecture everybody. I mean, he just loaded the table in this conference room up with every kind of base material that you can think of, the foam bases themselves, but rocks and dirt and texture and grass and just anything you can think of. Paints, had an airbrush there, and then he just really pushed us and allowed our creativity to kind of go where it went. And first of all, getting off of our feet for 4 hours and being able to kind of decompress and get creative with a bunch of people around you that are doing the same thing, and then having Rick there to advise you. It was really incredible, and I really enjoyed it. I had a base at the end of it, when I was done, and obviously I think everybody else did too. But shout out to Rick, and again, shout out to IPMS for taking a chance on something like that. I mean, it's something that in subsequent future nationals, if that's available, I'm going to really do what I can to attend, because I thought it was a home run.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And what was cool is, Rick was saying we took each day we had the bases at our table, and the base quality of each of those builds, and just this 4 hours, the work that was done by some of the people, and not some, all of them, sorry, it was fantastic. And people were trying to buy those bases off of our table, and I'm like, no, they're not for sale, we're just showing them off. And that's the quality they were at, and they were fantastic. There was some beautiful stuff there, and you have to hands down give it to Rick, because that's the exact way you learn how to build. Is you get a bunch of stuff. You don't sit there and watch somebody for an hour and a half build something and then you try and do it in an hour and a half. You go. And he had the right idea from the start, is just to attack it. And he would come around, and he went around to every single person the whole time. He was moving around, showing us, do this, try this, if this doesn't work, try this. And, I have to throw out to AK Interactive for, giving us the products and, all the stuff that we did. And it was fun. It was really, really fun. And you came out with a fantastic base in 4 hours, and you can't beat that. It was just a good old time.
when I started mine, I'd already been warned. Grant did it the day before, and he gave us the warning, go in with a plan, go in with an idea of what you want to do. Cause some guys were spending a lot of their time just trying to come up with an idea. So I went in with a basic idea, but the impressive thing to me after we were done and we had all of those bases sitting on the posse table was not one of them was the same. They all were different. Everybody without any guidance actually came up with their own concept and something entirely different. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree. Grant's base was fantastic. Aaron, the base that he came up with was really great. I mean, he had a little culvert and did some of the AK cracked earth and just really had an interesting concept. It was awesome to see what people were coming up with. So yeah, really, really terrific.
Unfortunately, I didn't follow anyone's advice and come up with a plan before I went in. And thanks again to the posse. I was just super excited to have the opportunity to go. And it was my first time meeting Rick in person. He's a super nice guy, down to earth guy, and very generous with his time. And I went in and I really didn't have a plan, but and I think, as Grant said, thanks to AK Interactive for providing the product, because one of the things was there was so much product out there and stuff I've never tried before. And I thought, well, this is my opportunity to try it. Sometimes you don't want to spend money on stuff if you don't know how it's going to work. And I saw that crackle paint there and I'm like, you know what? I've always wondered how this stuff would work. I'm never really quite sure if it was going to work as advertised or not. Here's my opportunity. And that really, using that crackle paint became my plan. And I kind of, went from there with a little desert base with a dried out, culvert and a brick wall or stone wall behind it. But it was just such a cool opportunity to have to, and I didn't really know how to use the crackle paint. And well, wait, here's Rick Lawler who can just, come over and give me hands-on advice. And it was incredible. And it was, I think, a great setup. I hope it's something that IPMS considers doing again in the future. I mean, I told Rick at the end, I said, if you do nothing else but give this exact same seminar next year, sign me up again. I mean, it's that valuable to me to learn. And I loved it. It was probably one of the top 3 highlights, of the entire show for me.
Yeah, that's well said. He kind of worked with a good friend, Josh Buck, and they put together kind of a sci-fi base for like a space marine or a figure. And it was just like you said, every single thing was a little bit different. It was some had a little more of a desert theme. Some had, traditional kind of armor theme. Some were sci-fi. Yeah, it was really, really terrific. Let's see, just going down the list, vendor rooms, guys, 3 full rooms of vendors. We had Squadron brought an entire hobby store. We had Fred and George, Tamiya USA booth, had a great booth of, all their products, all their new kits. They were fantastic to talk to, did a giveaway. We're giving t-shirts away. Zuki Mura had a huge giveaway, and somebody in the group knows a little bit about that. We'll talk about that in a second. Micro World Games, really, really impressive. And I mean, Edward, 25% off. I think just about everybody in this call came home with an FM2 or something from the Edward booth. So anyway, just incredible. 3 rooms of vendors. Maybe let's start with you, Jim. What'd you bring home from the vendor room, and what'd you think of it?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I love the concept of the Squadron hobby shop in a room. That was so cool. It's also kind of cool to see Squadron back. I think that is really cool, but it was just cool to see a vendor go out of their way to bring all this stuff. And I think they travel reasonably far. I'm not sure where Squadron is based. I fell into the trap of Tamiya 172, bought an F-35. I picked up a couple 172nd tanks from Vargas, the 3D printed Matilda and the Bob Semple, because the Bob Semple is the coolest tank ever. I will not take any complaints on that. And then just mostly weathering stuff and base making stuff. I didn't get to attend Rick's seminar, but I hope to hit him up at some point. But honestly, I know this is probably not the most popular opinion. The vendor room is overwhelming. There's too much. And it's just so much stuff. And I didn't actually buy anything from Edward. I also got a Maple Leaf base from Bases by Bill. who they had a PSP wood base. I'm gonna have to hit them up because they had it in 48th, and I need that in 72. But it was just so much stuff, so cool. But just a little overwhelming. So much. Like, I could have easily dropped thousands of dollars, and then my paralegal would have fired me.
Grant, what did you walk away with out of the vendor rooms?
I walked out with the Edward roof, the dual kit, the Japanese float planes. Fantastic price, couldn't pass it up. So I ended up with that. I ended up with a lot of diorama material and books. Some really, really good books that I've been looking for for a long time. I got the AK Artillery of Vietnam, which is a really interesting book. A lot of pictures. There's some artillery that served there that I had no idea. I didn't know there's a lot, like the Hawk air defense system. I didn't know that it was actually in Vietnam. But there was that. I got a really nice kit. It was their new Schweimagen from Das Works, which was very nicely donated to us. Got that and a few other things. But mostly, like I said, I ended up with a lot of old stuff that I've been looking for a while. A lot of Verlinden figures, a lot of custom dioramic stuff that I really wanted. He was there. Jose was there when I rated his bases by Bill. Can't say enough about him. Got a whole bunch of figure bases. Thank you so much for being a sponsors and helping us. And bases by Bill, you're the best. Talking to those guys was a great time. But that's about it.
No, that's not too bad of a haul. Aaron, you have pretty good taste. What did you pick up in the vendor room?
Well, my shopping list was pretty short this year. I'm kind of on a little bit of a budget right now, and so I wasn't really looking to go wild. I did pick up the 35th scale Maschinen Krieger Guster. I think that Grant's working on right now, and I want to go on record and say I texted JB as soon as I saw them and told him where they were. So his life decisions not to purchase immediately after that are on him. I was there, though. I will say in his defense, I was there when him and Brian agreed they would just do a group order out of Japan. So what Brian did on his own after that, I don't know what happened. But so I got that. That was from Rhino Hobbies. Rhino Hobbies has a great selection of tools and kits. They have a lot of those little wave springs that you often use on Maschinen Krieger kits. So for very reasonable prices. So I picked up a few of those. Other than that, I did buy for me, amazing thing, an airplane from Edward, 172nd scale MiG-21. That was kind of the last purchase. I was looking at it and TJ peer pressured me into it. He said something like, well, if you get one, I'll get one. And it was, as JB would say, practically free at the Edward prices. So that did come home with me. Other than that, just a few tools and things. So not a lot. I did bring home a Dragon Type 95, Japanese Type 95 tank that has traveled the world considerably in the past year. It was in my collection. I sold it to Jensen and took it to Omaha and gave it to him last year. And he took it back to the UK with him. And then Scott wanted that and a Type 97 that I had sold Jensen as well. So Jensen brought those back from the UK to Texas this year and gave them to Scott. And Scott insisted I take the Type 95. So it's been well traveled over the past year. It's actually what I was working on this morning. So that I'm excited to finish and hopefully take to Amps and then maybe Madison next year. So I'm sure if I went back and looked at everything that I brought home, I'd find something else exciting. But those were the highlights, along with, of course, John Everett's lightsaber. That was wasn't out of the vendor room, but it was probably the highlight of the week to bring home.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I'm going to be passive aggressive here, make Doug go last, and you'll know why here. But let's go over to Nukeman. Nukeman, what'd you bring home out of the vendor rooms from the Nats?
Well, for my own safety, I've really been trying to stick with smalls, so little things here and there. I did talk to Greg Cooper, who is working for Hobbytown, was right next to Jose, and Custom Dioramics. I bought a bunch of small stuff off him. And then a couple things from UMM, some tool-wise stuff, PE bender and a reamer that I'm probably going to repurpose for just bending PE and wrapping wires to make tubes and things. One gentleman was having a blowout of armor accessories and books in the small room, and I got 18 items for $45. So you couldn't beat that.
Wow.
I did. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was one for $5 or two for $5. So
That's Steve math right there.
Yeah, exactly. I did from a couple of the smaller vendors pick up a Grosserhund Mac, as well as a Asuka M32 B1 tank recovery vehicle, which actually I'm moving on already to one of my other friends. I couldn't pass up the price. It was ridiculously low. And one of my other friends is like, I need one. And I'm like, I already got one. So that we'll be moving that on. But just a bunch of small stuff in general. And it is overwhelming. There's just so much stuff. And, as you walk through the room, you're trying to find things and the like, and you just keep finding new stuff. Like stuff I didn't see on Wednesday, I was seeing Saturday morning. It is overwhelming, but I enjoy the heck out of it. I especially love digging through bins, because digging through bins, you find cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to plus one some of the vendors we've talked about. Bases by Bill, they brought the heat, man. They brought their plexiglass cases. They brought their painted bases. And again, every time I see their booth, I'm struck by how can you only charge this for this base? I mean, they're just incredible. And Christian, Bill, and Wes, it was great catching up with them. Loved having them on the show. I'm working with Christian and Wes designing a case for that big 24 scale Viper I'm working on. So anyway, Rhino Hobbies, we met them in Colorado at Commies Fest, and the owner of Rhino Hobbies, fantastic, unbelievable pricing for what he's got. He's got top quality stuff. And then Jose at Custom Dioramics, he was in our Suite 201 talking with us, and hopefully we're going to have some of his products to highlight for you in upcoming episodes. He's an incredibly nice, generous man. I had never met him before, really enjoyed that. So anyway, plus one on those, and we'll have more to say on that.
One more, Carl's Lionheart Hobbies, kind of the local hobby shop there. I know we went there Tuesday night, I think, after you picked me up from the airport, Scott, and they have a cool little shop there in Austin. And then they had a great display at the vendor room too. So they had some cool stuff.
Yeah, big shout out to those guys. They had some great items in their little store there. That was the super sweet people. And, they were just doing their best to help everybody out. That's a great little organization there.
It's amazing that you can pack so many good products into a tiny little hobby shop. If you're in the Austin kind of area, I think they're in Kyle, and just go. It's fantastic. All right, JB, what treasures did you bring home from Nats?
I brought home a good amount. I brought home enough where I had to buy a bag off Amazon and have it shipped to the hotel. So highly recommended, everyone. Bring a duffel bag. It actually worked out fantastic. So I arrived at the show with a roller bag for a carry-on, and then my models. And what ended up happening was I got a free check bag on the way home. So what I did was I bought a big duffel bag to put everything. I put all my clothes in that, and I put some models in the hard case. But let's see, what did I bring home? Spent a good amount of money, but a lot of great stuff. Had the opportunity to pick up an airbrush from Spray Gunner. So I bought the Grex Tritium, the pistol grip. I've been admiring him forever. And as John Everett likes to tell me, you're a grown-up with grown-up money, and you can do grown-up things. So I bought it as a grown-up. And then I spent a lot of money actually with the Squadron folks. I want to echo what everybody has said here. What they created at the Nationals was something special, and I'm hoping they do it again in Madison. It was truly a hobby shop. And I want to call Squadron almost like a phoenix, because Squadron was arguably number one market leader in retail for the hobby, probably 90s, early 2000s. And then it was a catastrophe, to say the least. Bankruptcy, sold the brand. Squadron was in its heydays, left a lot on the table, I think. They changed management, and it was crushed. And they went through bankruptcy, sold everything, even the garbage cans in their building. I remember seeing at auction. And Brandon and his dad went on and, bought the brand and reignited it. And I had an opportunity to connect with both of them at the show. I'm hopeful that they'll come on here. They shared their catalog that kind of tells their story. And what they had was amazing. They had a room that was pretty big. It was the same size as the seminar room, but it was filled chock-a-block, from the floor to the ceiling, all walls. And in the center, there were tables with countless accessories. And what they provided visitors was truly something special. So I spent most of my money in there. I picked up a Ryefield Tiger 1. That's the Japanese version, 72nd scale Tiger 1. I picked up a Blitz Stug that was cheap. And then my favorite purchase from them was the Tyrannosaur from X Plus Model Kit, and it's the Tyrannosaur that's chasing Ian Malcolm. Super excited to get started on that. It's such a great sculpt, and I'm really excited for the Spinosaurus and the Velociraptor they'll have up next. But injection molded, it ran me $70. You might think that's a little bit for a dinosaur kit, but it is 35th scale. You get a figure of Ian Malcolm, you get the base, you get the fence line there, and obviously the T-Rex chasing him. So I was super happy about that. And then the biggest thing I brought home was the new Das Werk SDKF 251. What can I say? Super grateful. Andy gave it to me at our booth. And, he also, Harold was there from Das Werk, and he gave Grant the new soft skin, the amphibious vehicle, which is really cool. And we're certainly going to build those. I've already started on the 251. I got the tracks assembled, a lot of parts clean, and I'll be working on this weekend. But long story short, I brought a lot of stuff back, way more than I expected to buy. But the duffel bag from Amazon came in handy. It was $30, and I was able to fit everything in it. I also need to give a special shout out to Mark and Jamie. They were kind enough to bring a tub and a box down for me to enter more models than what I took on the airplane. So super grateful for them. Can't wait to see them again, and certainly buy them dinner. So that's it for me.
Yeah, Scott, I want to say something real quick, if you don't mind. I remember in 2000, Vegas, the Vegas show, and when Squadron was there, and they just had the table and they were selling the prints. And the way they've gone from that to where they were at in Texas is fantastic. See that growth and that and people say, oh, the hobby's dead. No, it's not. Look at these guys did with Bruce and his son did with Squadron. It is so impressive that they went from basically selling prints that they bought at an auction from the store when it shut down. And now they had their own store, and there was every time you went by that room and you went in, there was a line every single time. And that just shows you what, hard work and this hobby can do. It was just very impressive. My hat is off to you, Squadron. You've done a fantastic job.
Awesome. Well, breaking news, JB brought home a free kit to build. Totally joking. And before we get to today's big winner, we have, I think Nukeman has a special guest there that wants to say hi.
So my son, Michael John, would like to say something to everyone.
I love listening to the Plastic Posse podcast.
Wow. Thanks, Michael John.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hey, that's great, awesome. Man. I appreciate it.
By the way, no money was exchanged, at least as far as I know, in that segment. So awesome, man. We love young listeners. That's great. All right. Well, now we're going to the Golden Boy. First, we're going to talk about what he brought home from the vendor room. And then, Doug, if you will lead us into what you brought home from the raffle.
All right. Well, I did most of my purchasing on day one. I didn't want to miss out on anything. So the Edward booth, I got the new FM2 Wildcat. I got the roof, the single roof, not the 2-pack. They only had 2 of those, and Grant and Jensen got those. And then I picked up, there was somebody selling, it was basically an estate, an old friend had passed away, and they were selling his kits for half off. So I got a couple of Tamiya 48 scale armor pieces. I actually got 3 of those. Gave one to Craig Flynn because he's never done armor, and I told him this is a good place to start, and handed him the T-55. And I got the posse got a Y-wing for Steve Munsell, who wanted one, but didn't want to pay the high prices, but Squadron was selling it for basically what you could find it online on Amazon. So $35 just a couple months ago. So that was donated to our friend Steve, who's done so much for us. It's the least we could do. And then I had to buy a base because of something else that I didn't purchase. Bases by Bill. I got a Messerschmitt base for a large scale aircraft and some little base plates, little templates for some Star Wars models, which is Y-Wing Starfighter, in wood. The base I got is actually inlaid wood. They said they're never going to build another one because it was too complicated. It took too much work, but they sold it to me for $20, which just blows my mind. It's a piece of art, and they need to charge more. So you wanted to hear about raffles?
Well, yes. No. Now hold on. Why did you buy a Messerschmitt base, Doug?
Well, there were a few different giveaways there. And one of them was Zukemura had the first 250 people that did it could go and fill out a little form, and you keep half that had your name and stuff and a number on it. And then they would did a drawing on Friday. I was number 67. And the funny thing was when they started drawing it, they first drew number 167, and then they drew 76, and then they drew 69 and 63. And I'm like, they're circling me here. They gave away t-shirts. They gave away some of their gorgeous books. And then they started handing out kits. And they called my number 67 for their very last drawing. It was their newest kit, the Messerschmitt BF 109 G14 that just released. So it's 32nd scale. It's magnificent. I mean, not having started to build it yet, I can just say that if it fits anywhere near as good as it looks in the box, it's going to be a stunner. Just a beautiful model.
Yeah, gorgeous box. Doug did have a trail of people following him after that. But anyway, well, let's roll into the raffle. I think you did pretty well there, too.
Well, as did you, Scott. But the raffle 2 years ago in Vegas, I didn't do the raffle. I didn't think anything of it. But TJ and JB were walking away with some pretty neat stuff. So I did it in Omaha and I won something. But this year, I gave them $40 and I walked away with 5 wins, including 2 aircraft, 2 Hasegawa 48 scale Japanese aircraft, Val and an Oscar, which will definitely be built. Those are cool aircraft. I picked up Andrea Miniatures Revolutionary Infantryman Colonial Revolutionary Soldier, which looks very, very nice. I've never done anything like it, but I chose that one because it was, it was a raffle win and it was an option. I thought I'd try something new. I got some Fruel tracks for the T-3485, and I got a Moebius Battlestar Galactica Viper Mark I, which was still wrapped. So I couldn't say no to that.
Yeah, that was, man, you really cleaned up. I bought $60 worth of tickets and I ended up really capitalizing. I did all of mine in the miscellaneous. You got to choose what you won. So I got 4 sets of Fruel metal tracks, which they are going away, and I love my metal tracks, so I was really happy. I did give a set to TJ, and also had another win after I thought we were done, and got an Alpine Miniatures figure and gave that to TJ. So anyway, did really, really well. I don't know, did anybody else participate in the raffle?
Well, I ended up buying $20 worth of miscellaneous tickets and so a little bit of armor. And I did win a half track, but Steve Munsell is like Mr. Raffle. He just likes the idea of winning. So Steve bought like $60 worth of tickets and he won like 14 times. So, and I know a lot of, I know a lot of those kits ended up going to other people, giving them to some of the youngsters that were around. In fact, one of the wins for miscellaneous that Steve had, I picked up, I'm not sure what Star Wars thing it was. And apparently standing behind me, there was a young lady who really, really wanted that. And she kind of had this look on the face like, you're stealing my puppy. And so when I turned around, I said, here you go. It's yours. Build it. And she was just so happy and went back and told Steve, and he was thrilled. So it's always fun. I'm Mr. Ticket Checker for value here.
Nice. You have a lot of roles over there.
I do what I do, whatever it is.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of the highest quality cutting mats for your modeling bench. Tankcraft cutting mats are heavy duty, self-healing, come in 2 awesome sizes, and have World War II tank and aircraft blueprint style drawings on them. Spread out your next build on an olive green M4 Sherman or Dunkelgelb King Tiger mat, and they've got aircraft too. So check out all the designs and also their range of unique modeling tools over at tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com. Don't forget, Plastic Posse listeners can use the code POSSE15 to get 15% off your first order. Wow, this is great. We could probably keep doing this for hours, but we'll kind of start to wrap up. Shout out to our buddies that couldn't come. Whitey from the Geeks, we missed you, man. It wasn't the same without you. Steve Baker, Blaine, Brian Kreiner, Sean Earl, so many of our friends that couldn't make it. We missed you. We hopefully will catch up with you sooner or later at a show.
Chris Wallace.
Yeah, Chris Wallace. Yep, Chris Sieber.
And Chris Sieber. We were short a couple Chris's.
Anyway, to all those of you that couldn't make it, we missed you there. Anyway, let's kind of wrap this up. We're going to talk very, very briefly about this topic. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to kind of just hand it off to JB, and we'll go from there. But the contest was great in some ways. There's been a lot of talk on social media. There's a lot of things I think that for a forum, maybe not this podcast, that need to be discussed. What's great is IPMS membership, as John alluded to, has grown significantly. We think that all of you out there listening to all of the podcasts and watching Martin on YouTube and on and on and on are probably a big part of that. But what's great about the controversy is that people are passionate and people care about IPMS USA. The e-board is, I know a lot of people don't think that their voice is being heard, but it is being heard. A lot of work is going on behind the scenes. I'll let them kind of talk to that. I'm certainly not worthy to be their spokesman, but I can tell you that a lot of work is being done. These guys volunteer for these positions. They're very difficult, and they're working hard to try and make it better for everybody else. I don't really want to get too much into the negative. I think a lot of the criticism that I've seen can be addressed. I think it can be improved, and I think that's kind of what the membership is saying that they want. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I really liked about the contest, and then I'll let you guys all comment on that, and then we can wrap it up and move on. So the first thing I want to say about the vendor room is there were two, I think, really, really big improvements this year. First was the lighting. The lighting in the contest room was fantastic. It's probably the best I've seen in a long time. Yeah, I saw Rob Booth in there walking around with his light meter, just checking it out. But it was really, from a lighting perspective, it was really, really above and beyond a lot of the shows, including the last two Nats that we had. And so that's great for the facility we were in, and great for IPMS. The other thing is, and I'm going to give kudos to Rob Booth on this, he went out and purchased pipe and made table extensions, and all the tables were on extensions. And I think for the judges and for most people, I think that was a positive move. I think there are some concerns from people that were on scooters or younger children that maybe we might want to drop it a little bit. But I think from my perspective, that was a really positive thing overall. And then the last thing was the overall number of models and quality. I think we missed the all-time IPMS record. John can correct me, but I think by 3. I think we were 3 short of the all-time record. The contest room was absolutely packed. And from my perspective, I've gone to the last 3 nationals. I think the level of quality was at least as good as, if not better than, the last 2 nationals. There were a couple categories, figures in particular, where I think the quality was significantly better than I've seen in the past. And so from all those areas, I think it was a really, really great contest. It's great to see participation. It's great to see the tables full of models. And it's great to have a room where the lighting and the level of the tables gives you easier access. With regards to the feedback, again, my thing is, I think the membership is starting to kind of be overwhelmingly for changes, and I hope that we can get some. I hope that IPMS will evolve and change. I think the contest can be better. There were a lot of broken models as a result of the judging. I think that can and will be addressed. I'm not gonna talk to that a whole bunch, but that's an area where we can improve. And I think just generally the contest format, overall the membership saying we want to be a part of this. We want to see some changes and enhancements. We want to try new things. And I think that's incredibly fantastic. We want the membership to be engaged, and we want to, frankly, we want to put on, we meaning modelers here in the United States, shows that people want to come from overseas to participate in, and we want, them to continually get better. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand the mic over to John, and then we'll kind of go around the room and see what your thoughts are on the contest.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. I just encourage anyone that if you went to the show and have feedback, an IPMS survey will be coming out soon. I encourage everyone who attended to please take a few moments, share anything in and everything about the show, especially the contest. And, IPMS is open to more feedback. I think as Scott mentioned, there's always areas for opportunity. But, in terms of the contest itself, outside of, the judging aspect, I was just impressed with the level of work this year that was on the display. I don't think the Texas folks knew they were going to get that close. And to be honest, if I knew they were that close and probably other people there, we would have ran out and literally bought a kit, slapped it together and thrown it on the table to get that record. So hats off to them. It's the first show in Texas in a long time, certainly the first one to that area. And IPMS Alamo Squadron has a lot to be proud of. So yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Jim, what were your thoughts on the contest room and the contest itself?
Well, I'm going to have a little bit of a hot take here. I thought it was a perfectly good convention ruined by a contest. But if anybody's listened to me, I am not a contest guy. What I will say, so to be positive, I 8 to 10 years ago thought I had the skills to maybe, finish second or third at a NATS. And now I see these models and it's just stunning. Like I feel every time I go, it's another level. And this year was the same, just stunning models. And I guess to be positive, I'm looking forward to see what our friends in Madison are doing with this whole Tiger Meat idea. I've been kind of yammering on about display. And I had a little bit of a laugh when you guys were talking about SIGs. I'm like, SIGs are great, but if we don't have display, what's the point? So I'm really excited to see what Madison does. And I do think going forward, the contest is something that will never go away. And I'm not a fan, but I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. But I think we need to open it up and include people who just want to display and not enter, include special interest groups, and make that a part of the convention. It's not just a contest, it's a convention. It should be the celebration of modeling. And I'm excited to see if that goes through. That would be wonderful. And I do feel IPMS contest committee needs to make some changes. I strongly believe you shouldn't ever be touching anybody's models. I hope we'll see that change. And I think they just need to look at how they're approaching it, and not actually, what bothered me wasn't so much the convention, but the reaction online of, you have certain self-appointed people who want to defend IPMS. Like I saw a lot of people going at people who weren't even e-board members. They're just random members. And I wish people would understand everybody has a different view and wants to see different things. And we all just want to make this a mecca to show what scale modeling is. And that's what the NAT should be. And it shouldn't just be a contest. And I wish we had more of that. And I'm excited to see what Madison does. I think this is a great step. I'm going to give props where they're due. I've been ranting on about this for 20 some years, and I'm just glad to see Chattanooga did a good job. It kind of fell by the wayside since then, and I'm looking forward to Madison's plan.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation there. Give kudos to Jeff Hearn and his team. And I think they've been very proactive, and they've really embraced the SIGs, trying to help bring those back and other things too. So if you can support them, I think that's great. Aaron, what were your impressions of the contest room and the contest overall?
Well, Jim had mentioned earlier that he was overwhelmed by the vendor room. And that's how I felt about the contest room. I'd walk in the door and just the sheer scale and size was just amazing to me. So overwhelmed, I guess, in a good way. And I would agree with you, Scott, the lighting was great, and lighting can just make or break a contest. And it was nice to have good lighting. I love the table risers. I do hear, the same feedback that perhaps maybe there's an adjustment that needs to be made down a little bit on them for both kids and people in scooters. So that's certainly, I think, something taken consideration for next year. But, live and learn. I think it was great that it was at least attempted this year to make some adjustments to make it easier to view the models, and hopefully the right point can be found to make make everyone happy and make it easy for everyone to see. And there were so many models. It almost felt like an injustice to just go in and just browse around and skim, because the quality of work was so great that, I'd feel bad. Each one of those models, somebody spent hours and hours and hours on it, and you just couldn't really take it all in. I'll take it off in little bits and pieces, just a few tables here or there, and then I'll go look around the vendors and then come back. And I thought it was neat that to me, I felt like it was a good distribution of types of models. There are a couple tables of airplanes, armor, figures, ships, automotive, and then even into sci-fi. It wasn't just airplanes, which was, when I was a kid, kind of my experience of IPMS. So there was something out there for everyone. And there were a lot more, at least in my mind, kit collections and group builds. We had the Machine and Krieger group build, which was awesome to see how many people, built something Mac, that probably more built Mac in a room in at least the United States than ever before, would be my guess. And, the junior displays, I think the one piece of feedback I saw somebody mention online is, why don't we put the junior displays up front, closer to the entrance, and show the future of the hobby up front and center? And I think that was a great suggestion. There's definitely some great quality junior builds, and it'd be cool to see those a little bit more up front and center for people to appreciate. But I mean, overall, I think it was a great contest. I had a good time going and viewing. I didn't have that many of my own entries in there, which was kind of cool because I maybe wasn't as invested myself in it personally, and I could just sit there and enjoy everyone else's work. I volunteered to judge, as I did last year in Omaha, and I've done at local shows and at AMPS. So I've got, I think, a pretty good experience on judging in different types, 1, 2, 3, or gold, silver, bronze. And I walked in the room and JB pointed at me and says, "You on my team." And I was perfectly fine with that. We've judged before, and I think can judge through pretty efficiently and fairly. In the time frame of judging, I think we got through 6 categories. With JB, myself, Bruce, and OJT Judge Tyler. And, some of those categories were pretty heavy categories, that 29 entries, I think, in one for German armor. Some great builds to go through. But in those 6 categories we judged, we were also able to leave a little line of feedback on the back of everyone's sheets, at least those who did not place. So they maybe had a little bit of an understanding of what it was they maybe could work on in their modeling and improve on for next time. And that's something that people have always said can't be done in the IPMS format. And I guess what, it can. It doesn't take that much longer to do it. So, but overall, I think it was a great contest. And, I've definitely seen in some of the comments online, and I would also feel we didn't need to pick up any models. If we picked them up, it was by the base to move them, maybe look at wheel alignment, but we weren't picking up models that were off their bases for any reasons, nor did we need to I think, fairly judge for a winner. So there's improvements that can certainly be made in any sort of contest, and there's I think some good discussions to be had, but it was still a great time. There's nothing that's going to detract me from going back again to Madison next year.
Awesome. Yeah, as like you said, I think the goal should be that every year we try and make it a little bit better, and as John mentioned and I mentioned, get that feedback back to IPMS, the e-board, and the NCC. Get your feedback to them, give them the opportunity to take a look at that. Doug, what were your impressions of the contest?
Well, it was stunning, the work I saw. I will admit that I didn't see everything. Every time I see people posting pictures online of one of their favorite things, I'm like, I don't think I saw that one. And it's not for lack of trying. The only complaint I have, I'm not even going to talk about the contest, but the room was there. The aisles between the tables were kind of narrow. So there were times when you weren't going to get a look at something without having to try to get your way around other groups and squeeze through people. And so I did miss a few models, probably more than a few. But overall, the quality of the work was amazing. It's inspiring. To be honest, I think, I could probably make something that might actually fit in on some of these tables, but I just am blown away by the level of work that these people are capable of. We've mentioned our group build. That was insanely cool. All the different ideas, people came up with their own creative ways of doing things. The other group builds, there were some really neat ones. I think they came up from Mexico. The guys that did the aces, a bust of an ace with a model of his aircraft from World War I through World War II, and it was a great display. I think that one took first. Just neat stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, seeing just walking into a room that had bobble Rebels Blockade Runner, and John Everett's 1-to-1 scale Dinosaur, and Bruce Hazumi's, Return of the Wine Tasters, and John's work. I mean, that's inspiration right there. So yeah, really, really top-notch quality. Nukeman, what was your kind of impressions of the contest?
Well, first off, I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm right now. But overall, the big thing is for me, I always get overwhelmed whenever I walk into the contest rooms. In general, I always have a hard time focusing and looking at what I need to. I always appreciate when people take good pictures so I can look at them later. But overwhelmed with not only the quantity of what was there, but just the quality was absolutely amazing. And I think one of the things that really stuck out with me is starting to be seeing so many models I've seen online. And I've talked to people about, the stuff that to see it in real life where I've seen nothing but pictures before was really, really cool. And I really, really appreciated to get to do that. Contest in general, and Nats is always tough for me. It's always good though, whenever you're in a competitive category and your 3 friends take a sweep of that category over you. So that is always good. You appreciate it. So, but no, absolutely. The lighting was gorgeous. I had a hard time getting around to everything. Meeting and talking with people in there was definitely the big thing, more than ever winning anything there. So, yeah,
that's well said. But again, over 3,100 models, just, a really great opportunity for inspiration. And I wanted to shout out Grant for his collection of dwarves. The presentations on that were really great. I mean, we just go on and on and on. So anyway, well, I think that's a pretty good wrap up from the show. Let's one thing I do want to spend a little bit more time before we close the door on an amazing San Marcos is maybe turn the mic over to Grant for a minute and then talk about our MAT group build. The participation and the quality was awesome. Before I let Grant kind of talk generally, Andy Taylor brought a Machining Krieger suit and incorporated it into a Monty Python motif. And it was awesome, man. It was the creativity was great. But anyway, Grant, what'd you think about our group build and what were some highlights for you?
The group build was fantastic, as some of the people have said before. We had over 40 entries, that was great. And I think that's the most Machining Krieger I've seen on a table of the States. So that was really great. We had everything. You mentioned the Monty Python. You talk about the frog. There was SAF suits. There was Mark 1s. There was Mark 2s. There was nut rockers. There was everything on the table. And it was kind of funny because when we first got there on Wednesday, people were like, where do we go? Where do we set up our Machining Krieger? And we didn't have a set place yet. And I'm like, just hold on to that one right now. We're going to, and all of a sudden, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, it just went crazy. That table, it was fantastic. It was really a fantastic a group of models that were showed up, and I want to pick out one and for the highlight, and it's a gentleman who couldn't make it, who got COVID the day before, literally before he was supposed to leave, and that's Cliff Herring's Ammonite. And if you haven't seen the pictures of all the call outs yet, it is amazing. Cliff's a great guy, and the stuff he hid in this thing, you've got to see it. Because I found a few of these, and not lying, there's some easy ones, the California and stuff like that. But there's like tiny little things, and if you look at the picture, there's it's got Scott's nickname on it, and there's also the Utah State symbol on the side. There's the Colorado silhouette for JB, on there. There's the front armor, can't say it right now. JB's favorite dessert. Funfetti. Sorry, I could not say that word. That's on there. There's the date of the very first podcast on there, on the front, right on the front of the visor, right above the visor. There is signal lights are in Steelers colors. I don't know who the Steelers fans is, but sorry, but there's the Steelers there. There's the P for the posse. There's my third Ranger bat symbol on the back. Rangers lead the way. Thank you. There's the postcode for Jensen on the back. His postcode is on the back. Utah State symbol again for Scott and Doug. There's the California plate we talked about. There's the Virginia silhouette. I didn't even see this one. I was on the back of right above the engine compartment. If you look really closely, there's a silhouette of the Virginia for TJ on there. There's also the box itself has the number 74, which is the current episode we're on that is released right now for, that's on there. There's the white crayon, the famous white crayon for Jensen. And there's just, there's the clean slate build on the laser. I could go, there's so many things on this little build. And, Cliff, we missed you, man. We really missed you. And we understand, but man, we missed you. It was such a great, fun time to see the growth of this group build to what it was. It was inspiring to me. It was inspiring to all of us in the posse to see you guys, attach this and grab this build and do what you did. And the models there were fantastic. They could have competed, in my opinion, on the tables very easily, very, very easily. You guys are all extremely talented. And all of us here at the posse really appreciate what you did for us. And that comes from the heart from all of us. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, shout out to Scott Hall. Did his first ever Maschinen Krieger kit. It was lit. It was levitating. Yep. It had a base. It had another suit on it. Yeah. I mean, he went the full enchilada. So yeah. Anyway.
Craig too. Craig brought one all the way up from Australia for us. So it was, it was amazing.
Fantastic. As always, thank you for participating. Our group builds starting in Vegas and through the last two nationals, the posse supported us. It's amazing. We really appreciate it. All right. Well, let's turn some time over to Mr. Doug, who's going to walk us through our calendar of upcoming shows.
Okay. This is a pretty good list, man. We keep getting people suggesting shows that they'd like to hear us shout out. We're going to start with the Northeast Mecha Modeling Expo. It'll be held at the Mecha Warehouse in Concord, New Hampshire on August 13th. Saturday, August 19th, 23, it's the Best of the West Model Show at the Orleans Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. August 26th and 27th, the Tank Farm Show in Nokesville, Virginia. Look at their website, americansinwartime.org. Ventura County IPMS and IPMS 101 Wonders present the first annual WonderCon held in Oxnard, California at the Murphy Auto Museum September 9th, 2023 from 9 to 4. Boise IPMS Fall Show September 9th, 2023. Contact Brian Geiger, modeler63@yahoo.com to reserve a table and sponsor a category. Details at ipmsboise.org.fallshow.html. Central Arkansas Scale Modelers 22nd Annual Show, September 29th to 30th, 2023 at the Jacksonville Community Center, a few miles northeast of Little Rock. This one looks awesome with seminars by Jim Rice, Rusty Nail, and Ken Childress. IPMS OrangeCon Model Show, Buena Park, California is October 1st. PatCon will be on Sunday, October 1st from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Hudson Elks Lodge in Hudson, Massachusetts. That was PatCon. And then we've got PaxCon, aka Geek Fest, at the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department in Hollywood, Maryland on October 7th. This year's IPMS Vancouver Fall Show will be at the Bonsoir Recreation Complex, Burnaby, British Columbia on Saturday, October 7th, 23. Also on October 7th, we have the Reno IPMS High Rollers Show from 9 to 4. Details at renohighrollers.com. We have CapCon at the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, October 14th. See all the details at ipmsottawa.com. Scale Model Challenge, Eindhoven, October 14th to 15th. MMSI Chicago Marriott in Schaumburg, October 20th and 21st. Bay Colony Modelers Club presents BayCon 2023, November 5th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Franklin, Massachusetts. Scale Model World, Telford, Shropshire, United Kingdom, November 11th and 12th.
I was given, also as a highlight, a couple of the guys from different shows gave me their flyers at the Triple P at Nationals, and I want to give a shout out to them real quick. We got the Huntsville Plastic Modeler Society Fabulous at 50, celebrating 50 years of modeling, August 26th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Huntsville JC's building in Huntsville, Alabama. And then we also have the 2023 model contest and swap meet October 14th at 2023 at the Hobart Moose Lodge in Hobart, Indiana. This is the IPMS Demo Show. And I really want to thank John Fluke, who is the contest vendor, for stopping by. And he's a really nice guy. And please go out to his shows.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, let's take a little bit of a break and move into that conversation with John Chung. I know you guys are really going to enjoy this deep dive with him. So here we go.
Yeah, so I don't know if JB has told you this, but I dug out this really old photo from years ago that someone took at Heritage Con. And it's just, a bunch of us standing side by side for a photo op, a bunch of us friends after a seminar at Heritage
With Brett
Con.
Green.
With Brett Green, yeah, that was that's got to be at least 6 years ago.
Yeah,
and I knew everybody. I literally know everybody in that photo except this guy standing to my right. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, why is he standing over here?
Why is he here?
Doesn't know us. I don't know him. At least not I know well. I look a little closer. Wait a minute, I think that's a guy on that podcast I listen to all the time. Turns out it was JB. So I shot a photo over to him and said, hey, did you know that we crossed paths? We literally rubbed shoulders with each other.
Yeah, that photo. I mean, I've known Barry since I was born, for crying out loud. Tony Bell for a long time. Is Harvey Lowe in that picture?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then Tony's
John
in
Wong.
it as well. Oh, John.
Tony's in it.
John. Yep.
John Wong, yeah.
That's a heck of a picture. I tell you what, with those names, I mean, come on now.
Who the hell's this guy? Who's the armor builder in this group of airplanes?
John and I were talking the other day, I was talking to him about how fortunate he is. I mentioned, JB, you're part of a really rich modeling community in the Denver area. Grant, you're part of a very rich modeling community in Southern California. And John, he's up there with Harvey, Chris Wallace, Chris Sieber, Harvey Lowe, Tony Bell. That Toronto area is just, I mean, you can't throw a rock without hitting a world-class modeler. John Chung, I mean, it's just amazing community he's a part of up there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mentioned this to Scott, that when I was growing up, my parents, my dad and my mom would both drive me to IPMS meetings since I was an early teenager. And I would rub shoulders with these giants in the model building community. Harvey Lowe, I remember meeting him when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. Tony Bell, every time I go to a contest, his model would just blow me away by how precise and pristine and well built. Yeah, and it's people like this that really inspire me growing, that really push me growing up. Yeah, to this day, I still look up to them as the ones that really have positively influenced me and affected me in every way. Every fiber of my being as a model builder is in some way nurtured by these people that I've had to, the blessing and the pleasure of being around.
John, was that IPMS Toronto?
Yes.
Okay.
IPMS Toronto, yeah.
Yeah, they have a solid group and a solid selection of hobby shops. So unfortunately, Hornet's gone, RIP. Maybe it'll come back in some form one day. But Dave Brown's place was awesome. Another name, Dave Forrest. Sorry, another Toronto
Dave
name.
Forrest,
yeah, is another great Toronto modeler. Sandy McRoy.
Yeah.
For hobby shops, were you finding yourself at Hornet and then Wings and Wheels?
Wheels and Wings is the hobby shop to go to now in Toronto in the GTA area. There are a few smaller shops just outside of the GTA proper. But Wheels and Wings they're nicely situated. They're close to downtown. They're sort of, they're pretty decently stocked. The staff are very knowledgeable. Kyle Hood is one of the ones that you see his name around online as well. He's very knowledgeable, very helpful, very friendly. When I was growing up, there were a few hobby shops that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years that have since closed because being around that long, the owners would retire. But yeah, but prior to going to IPMS meetings, I would show up at the hobby shop every Saturday morning, as a teenager, and just listen to stories of model building, but also of peripheral interest, stories. Some of these guys have been in military, some of these guys will have family members have been militaries and have served or been pilots, for instance. And these are inspirations, I would go in there and old hobby shop. You walked in, it's always smelled like secondhand smoke. I didn't care.
That's how you know it's legit.
Yeah, I know for sure, right? You open up the 40
Smells like a Swisher Sweet.
40-year-old monogram box, and the box itself just turned yellow from all the secondhand smoke.
Yeah, smells like secondhand smoke and Hummel paint.
Yeah, with the odd coffee stains here and there. That's how you know it's legitimate.
John, I remember the first time I went to Hornet, and you describe exactly what I experienced when you walk in, and there's Harvey Lowe's, Nagato. Tony Bell has his work there.
Yeah.
Harvey Lowe's stuff is in the basement. So really, like you said, inspirational. You can sit there, you can learn from these guys. And it's just a really great scene. And I think your show scene up there is really good too. We mentioned Heritage Con all the time, but there's also Torcan, which is a great show.
Yeah, for sure. Torcan's been around for a very long time. I think it has always been Peel Region Model Builder Club project. I could be wrong. It could have been an IPMS Toronto show years ago. It's always been sort of within the city proper of Toronto, the show to go to every year, at least in the spring. There used to be another show in late October called Harwood in the city of Ajax, just outside of Toronto, east side of Toronto.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. So that was a really good show until the main guy who helped organize it. Sort of he was a retired school teacher that I believe he taught at that school. So he would negotiate with the school for the clubs to basically use the facility either at cost or almost free, and then all the proceeds from the show will go towards helping the school out. Or the community of that sort. So that was a really good show to go to in the fall. Heritage Con, 15 years now, I think, 14, 15 years now. I remember when the show was first starting out, and it wasn't as well known back then because it was a little bit outside of the city. But over the years, Alan Murrell and his crew have done a fantastic job of building up the rapport and supporting the community, and also supporting the museum over there. It's for those that don't know, it's at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum, and it's the largest flying museum in Canada, where most of their collection is in flyable condition. In fact, they have one of the two airworthy Lancasters today. So it's the venue itself is essentially a large hangar, which is ideal for hosting large events, and that has turned into a great symbiotic relationship between IPMS Hamilton and the museum itself. I'm pretty sure that this past year they maxed out the entrance room for the museum so much that they had to stop people from going in because the fire marshals showed up and said you can't fit any more people in the building. I don't know if that's ever happened at the show. I don't think so, but I don't believe it's happened much in the history of the museum either. So you can see it's a pretty good relationship that the show brings out.
Yeah, for sure. I remember talking to Alan. The museum, they love them. It's the biggest show they have of the year. I remember talking to him a few years back, and they asked him, "Hey, do you mind doing it twice a year?" And he's like, "I don't think we can do that, but it's certainly a very popular event. It certainly could be something for 2 days, for crying out loud. It's an amazing event. I think, like you said, they have a winning formula. They're leveraging social media and really just bolstering the social aspect of the show too. And I think it's just great.
I think I started going to community events, so club meetings and contests in probably the late 90s.
Okay.
So, well, you've been around for quite a while, eh?
Well, I mean, I feel like
Canada.
I was born.
He's the youngest of the three of us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember growing up, I'd go to shows when I was since I was 4 or 5 years old, but especially Canada, IPMS, Canada, when they had the Nationals in London, Ontario, my dad was always really good friends with Harvey Lowe. So we knew Harvey, right. Gates Basson, let's see. But yeah, those guys. And then obviously Tony Bell, John as well. And just that whole crew up there, really good. And then obviously the hobby shops as well. So it was, it was a thing. Toronto was the place to go. You go to the show, you do the hobby shops. I remember even in the early 2000s, we did the hobby shop run. And then also we went a little north to CFB Borden to their museum, and then hit Canadian Warplane Heritage. And then came back through Buffalo. That was when the blackouts happened back. I want to say 01, 02.
I remember that.
2 time frame, but yeah.
I Toronto's think it was 99, was it?
Maybe even before
2000.
Yeah,
2000, something like that.
I think 2000 sounds right.
Yeah, I remember that.
it was Toronto's always been a good place, always real strong for hobbyists and great hobby shops, great people. And I really want to see the Canadian Nationals come back, man.
Yeah, I think it probably helps that we have, I think it's what, like the quarter of Canadian population living in the GTA area.
Yeah.
We have no other major urban centers that even come close. I mean, Vancouver is pretty populous. So are Ottawa and Montreal, but it's not the same as Toronto, right?
Yeah.
So it's not in the same as in the States where every single state you have some sort of major urban centers that are comparable in size. And then you have mega cities like New York and San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Houston, Texas to some degree. But in Canada, that Toronto is where you go, especially as my family immigrated from Asia when I was really, really young. And that's, we went straight to Toronto because that's where you got to go if you want to start out on the right foot. And I think that the hodgepodge of different backgrounds of individual really helps to build up that community of model builders. One of the founders, I think, if not the original founder of IPMS Toronto, Derek Pennington, he's since passed away. He came from the UK. I believe he settled right in Toronto, and he started IPMS Toronto back in the 60s or 70s because of it. So there's always that origin story of where people came from and how they got here, and they established the roots and they built communities. Going back to Hornet Hobbies, I remember when Dave Brown was talking about starting Hornet Hobbies. Wow. That was his passion project. Yeah, and he finally, he finally did it, and we're so happy for him. We would all visit, right, just to show support for. I mean, it wasn't the biggest hobby shop. It wasn't the most plentiful selection. The prices weren't the most competitive sometimes, but he was our friend, and we would always go and support him. We would have our models there. I never did. I was not good enough.
Oh, please.
Whatever.
Yeah, we would go to his basement and we'll just hang out. We'll just chit chat. We'll have group builds in the basement once in a while.
That basement. It
was great.
Yeah. It's for our listeners, Hornet Hobbies. It was a place. It reminded me like the local bar. It was like the Cheers bar. Everybody knows your name. You walk into the hobby shop, and there's not a lot of organization. It kind of reminds you of your stash room, where it's a little disorganized, a little bit of everything, and the basement is where it's at. And I remember the first time I went there. I've told the story before, but Dave Brown didn't even know me. I was like, is that Harvey Lowe's Nagato? Is that Mike Rinaldi's Stud 3? He's like, oh, yeah, let me show you the basement. And then he took us to dinner and had beer there afterwards, watched the Leafs play. I mean, talk about a wholesome, really encouraging place for the hobby. That's what Hornet Hobbies was. And I would love to do the same someday, maybe in retirement, never from now, because I'll never. Yes, but no, you bring up a really good point. So, John, I think you've been exposed to all this at a really young age. I want to take a turn to the professional side. Do you think that influenced your professional career path in engineering and aerospace? Oh,
yeah, for sure. So when I was doing my undergrad in university, college, I guess for Americans, I had a hard time finding placement internship during the summer months. And when you're in undergrad, that's how you build up rapport, right? That's how you build up relationships so that when you do graduate, you can get a real paying job that has longevity. So I was finishing up my fourth year, my final year of university, and I was quite anxious because I have nothing to put on my resume. And then I got an email from this guy named John Wang. He's like, hey, I know that you're finishing up your aerospace engineering degree. You want to come over to our company and just check it out? Just want to see how we are. I'm like, okay, who is this guy? A professional. I know he's a model builder, but is he just like a Joe Nobody, some aviation company that I've never heard of? So I go, it's a small company called Decca Aviation beside the airport. I walk in, very, very humble place, very, very homely place. And I go into this office, and this old gentleman, Bob Foster, sat me down, and he started telling me about all the projects that they're doing. And, back then they were working on some passenger to cargo combi conversions for airliners and water bomber projects for forest fires in Canada and abroad. And okay, it sounds pretty interesting. Aircraft modification. In my mind, the place to go to after graduation was always Bombardier, an OEM of some sort. The 20, 30 minutes later, he's like, hey, do you want to walk around and show you what the filing cabinets and everything? I'm like, okay, that's weird. By the way, I was wearing like a t-shirt and a jeans. I walked around to the back of the office area, and John Wang stepped out of his office. He's got his own office. I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's bigger shot than I thought. We chatted a little bit. We go back to the front office. We sat down, and then they're just like, so when do you want to start? Like, what? was that an interview? Some sort? I'm to this day, I'm extremely thankful for John Wang. For those that don't know, John Wang's a giant of the model building community in the Toronto area for a very, very long time. He's very humble. He's very unassuming. He's probably listening to this right now, and he's gonna shoot me an email later telling me why did I put him on a spot. But yeah, he gave me my first job out of university as an aircraft engineer, and I cumulatively worked at that company for just over 10 years. And he was a friend. He was a mentor. He was someone that has significant influence on my life, both professional and personal. And yeah, to this day, my wife and I, we call him my work dad. So that's what he was and is to me still. Yeah. And it was in that environment where I got to practice both I was able to allow my passion for model building as a hobby, as well as my propensity for engineering to flourish. Sort of, in that environment where it was an environment where I was able to allow the hobbyist side of me and the professional side of me to symbiotically grow, and I was able to be better as a result.
John, speaking of passion, I mean, we'll talk about several of your projects during this interview, but I want to talk about a project that you've been working on for a very, very long time, your shuttle. I mean, let's just be upfront and honest. The kit that you started with is not a great kit. I wouldn't say it's a good kit, but I mean, you have been over the course of, I'll let you tell the story, but kind of walk us through the apex of where your shuttle project started and how a person is so passionate about a work.
Maybe Monogram is not state of the art. How dare you say that, Scott? Yeah, so before I start, I made this joke to Scott prior that my wife made to me, that I'm probably the only person that's alive who's so well known for a model that I'm not anywhere close to finishing. I've shared before that the model that I'm building right now is a 40-year-old kid made by Monogram in the late 1970s. It's the 72nd scale Monogram Space Shuttle Orbiter. The actual kit itself was actually gifted to me by my parents as a birthday gift when I was a teenager. I've been bitten by the space bug ever since I watched the movie Apollo 13. My aunt took me to see the movie. She's since passed away, God bless her soul. But ever since then, I've been enamored and fascinated by the world of spacecraft and aircraft. When I was 12 or 13, I think I built my first iteration of this kit. And a few years later, I thought I'd do it again because, my skills have drastically improved in the 3 years between when I was like 11 and 13 years old, right? So I want to do it again. And I remember being in the car driving home with my father, and he said that, don't you already have one of these? I'm like, yeah. And I just left it at that. Over the next 20, 30 years or so, I've actually had a few false starts, so to speak. Have you guys seen that documentary, Free Solo, about the guy that wanted to climb El Cap on his own, and he had a couple of false starts? I could relate to that 100% because I literally have had a couple false starts of this kit where there's one instance where I opened the kit up and said, okay, this is it, I'm going to do it. And I started scribing the wing. That's where I started because it's flat, right? I did the bottom of one of the ailerons and that's it. I quit. I just quit right on the spot. And I had Monogram send me a replacement set of parts for that particular wing. It was like that for 20, 30 years where I kept wanting to go back to restart the project. And in that process, I will grow and develop as a model builder more and more to know that I'm not there yet. I just knew that I'm not there yet because the more I learn about myself as a model builder, the more I learned about the subject matter, the space shuttle itself, the more I got scared. I got really scared of how complex and how major this project would have been. You guys probably have, been following me for a while, and the amount of meticulous attention that goes into not just the execution of the work, but the planning that goes into it, as well as the research from materials.
It's like the double-edged sword, because as you continue talking about sort of your research, the more you researched it, the more you wanted to improve your skills to match the level of your research. Just amazing. Can you talk about the research and where that journey led you?
Oh yeah, for sure. So research, when early 90s, right? There was no internet where you can find 3D scans of a subject matter. Now I have the Smithsonian 3D scan. Back then, with just books. There's this book by this guy named Jenkins called Space Shuttle. That was the Bible of the space shuttle program if you want to really learn about the orbiter. In addition to that, I actually wrote a letter to NASA as a teenager, and they sent me a binder full of technical documentation, so that added to my library. And in the early 2000s, when they were finishing up the space shuttle program after Columbia, NASA started putting imagery online, high resolution imagery. So I would download these imagery with my dial-up modem, just staying up all night, downloading everything off their database. And now you can find Smithsonian 3D scan of the Space Shuttle Discovery that's sitting in the Uvahazi Museum. So over the span of 20, 30 years, there's a lot I've accumulated in all sorts of different medium. But I gotta say, something that has exceeded my expectation, it's sort of a pleasant surprise, is that the advent of social media has really opened the floodgate to not just the information that you can get, but the individuals that you are, or I have been able to cross paths with. There are people who have been on the shuttle program all of their life that have worked on the orbiter vehicles, that have saw my work and have reached out with a helping hand with helpful information and tips, and just things of that nature, where sometimes I will receive a message from someone who's worked on for instance, the aft space shuttle engine bell dome, and they'll say, hey, I physically put those thermal blankets there, and this is how it is, as opposed to this other image that you show on your post a couple of days ago. And I would just be blown away, like, who am I? I'm just some guy who's passionate about space shuttle. Meanwhile, this person who have dedicated their lives to working on the actual vehicle is reaching out to me to educate me about something that he has dedicated his life to. So that process is very rewarding to me. I feel over and again honored to be able to cross paths with these individuals that have helped me along the way. But going back to what we were talking about earlier about the journey of wanting to build the space shuttle over the years and how I've changed as a model builder, I think something that I had to struggle with as a person, as a model builder, is how I would approach the detail and the accuracy aspect of it. I think that is paramount in how I'm executing my build. When I was a fresh model builder, how we all go through the phase where when you're first starting, you just want to slap a model together, tube glue, paintbrush. That's kind of like the honeymoon period of model building. And then you started to practice with things that are outside your comfort zone, like resin aftermarkets and aftermarket decals, and you will learn how to scratch build, and you learn how to scribe details, and that kind of snowballs. And I had to go through that phase where I would struggle with techniques, but also how far I should take detailing or accuracy or weathering. Yeah, so I had to find a happy medium where I could find my own limit to how far I'm able to take a certain technique or a certain perspective on a model, and then not take it any further.
For the viewers at home, I'm sharing a picture of John's model. And for those of you who aren't familiar with John's work, go to Facebook, and he's Scale Scriber on Facebook, and you're going to want to go take a look at this. But your happy medium and your compromise is like Leonardo da Vinci taking a look at one of his works and going, I think I've gotten to a place where I can live with this, John. Amazing. Anyway, I've interrupted you, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Oh, no. I honestly feel like I'm just rambling right now.
Now, this picture is kind of sentimental to me because the company I work for now, Story Musgrave, who's an astronaut who actually flew on the space shuttle several times, worked on the Hubble, through the space shuttle. I showed him the picture and he's like, well, where did you get a picture of the space shuttle was under construction? And I'm like, no, that's a monogram kit of the vehicle you flew. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yes, it is. So we had this big, long conversation and I'm showing you his work. And he's like, he's got the actual small, because we were looking at the engine. He is a big engine guy. We were looking at the tri-engines on the back. And he's like, you've actually got the small heat pads on the back of the engine compartment. Nobody does that. And I'm like, yeah, it's, and he was so impressed. He was, and, taking it from a guy that has many hours in space and what he did, you should take that as a very big honor. He's a hell of a guy and he really loves your work. So
wait, you show my space shuttle model to Story Musgrave?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely speechless. Right? This is exactly what it meant, right? I'm constantly mind blown and just extremely humbled about the people that I get to cross paths with, either directly or indirectly. Like he's probably the only guy who's flown all 5 orbiters.
Yep.
4 or 5. Yeah. And he's like a god in my mind. Wow, thank you. I really appreciate that. Wow.
No problem. And he's, I will definitely pass along, this, that you appreciate his work, what he's done. But yeah, he said, if you ever talk to that guy, just tell him he nailed it. And you see, so.
What an honor. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Story Musgrave. Wow. People, if you don't know who Story Musgrave is, just hit his name up.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great books too. So he does. He did the flyovers Australia, where you can you see the whole area. But going back to your work, like I said, he's a big fan. So congratulations.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate that. No, I was just going to say, like, it's moments like this that help me push on through. That I know that not only am I finally doing what I always wanted to do. This is a passion project. I wanted to do this model well as a tribute to foremost my parents who have supported me along the years, as a child who with this passion, this extreme passion for spacecraft, and then into my professional years as an aerospace engineer, but also to the broader sense of the people who have dedicated their life to aerospace, and to have that come back, to have that interaction, really, it's just tremendous. It pushes me through, the monotonous period of having to sit there for hours on end and scribing the thermal blankets and scribing the tiles and thinking, wow, nobody will ever notice that area in the back on the engine belt that I'm putting in. But people do notice, and that's very humbling. It's very encouraging.
For those people out there that, most of the modelers in the community are going to be at least familiar with this orbiter. They've seen it. Most people have seen this kit. I built this kit when I was a kid. A lot of people have had experience with it. The space shuttle was hugely influential, I think, and especially those of us that are a little longer in the tooth than you are. Maybe kind of walk us through, that picture I shared, what your process is, what you've done so far. When we're talking about adding tile detail, we're adding blanket detail. What tools are you using? How are you going back to your references? Kind of walk the listeners through what this looks like as you're working on it to get this amazing result.
Yeah, so I think just off my head, there are two main aspects to this. When I'm inspired by a subject, in this case, the space shuttle, but this applies to everything else that I do in the model building sense. I'm usually inspired by the history of the subject, the technical aspect of the subject as an engineer. And I'm also I'm inspired by the aesthetics of the subject, how it looks. I think the looks in particular is very important when it comes to the space shuttle, there's the intricate details that immediately strikes me when I look at an image of the shuttle from the outside. The tiles, the blankets, the topography, and I think that is essential to really, really bring out what the shuttle was as a machine, as a tool, and it's almost like a living, breathing animal in some ways, that goes through its life, interacting with the environment and interacting with the people that live and work around it. So to me, being able to reasonably replicate the thermal protection system specifically is paramount. So there are a few ways of doing this that have been attempted by other modelers over the year. Decals is one of the solutions that you apply decals on the outside. That'll give a facade of what the tiles look like, the thermal protection system will look like. And then there are the surgical tape method, for instance, essentially adhering an actual fabric with its quilted texture on the outside of the model in very thin layers, and surgical tape is one of which that people have used successfully over the years. And then there's the literally cut individual tiles from strip styrene and glue it on method. But I think all of those were insufficient in some way. I think the space shuttle is very, very unique in having tiles that are specifically tailored to locations. You've heard of every other tiles. Every other tile will be different on the space shuttle. There's no two similar tiles. And for me to be able to replicate that accurately, and then assuming that I will make mistakes, I will have to be able to correct it. So if I were to adhere tiles on the outside using styrene, then that would have been a lot more work to remedy if I were to fix it. If I want to approach the thermal protection blankets, for instance, using the fabric technique, then that would introduce surface textures that may not actually be there in scale. For instance, even though the blankets are textured, they are actually very smooth aerodynamically. So in 70-second scale, they're almost flat, but with minute surface panel line engravings, for instance. Like if that's I'm not really describing this very well, but there'll be too much topography if I were to use a certain, fabric to blend onto it, the surface.
It won't be in scale.
Yeah, for sure. For those that actually pay attention, I would tailor the direction of the quilting pattern on my thermal protection blankets to match as close as possible to those on the real subject. And that would be very difficult to do if I were to cut surgical tapes and adhere them onto the side of the model. I think the reason why I'm rambling on and on about all of these is I'm trying to distill my potential approach down to one that I can actually reasonably execute. It channeled down to just scribing, good old fashioned scribing with a scriber tool, extremely labor intensive, but so is a lot of things in model building, I think.
Definitely. I mean, the level of detail that you're doing obviously starts with the research. You've mentioned the 3D scans from the Smithsonian. We're looking at a picture of the tail right now, but I mean, obviously the amount of detail that you're putting into each one of these sections means you've got to know each one of those sections very, very intimately in order to replicate all these intricate patterns that you're scribing into the surface.
Yeah, and this is for sure. And I think this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't have been able to successfully carry on this project if I had started just more than 2 or 3 years prior to when I did, just because I would not have been able to have, say, the Smithsonian 3D scan to help me out. I had high resolution photos and imagery, but if I want to go in and zoom into, if you see the bottom of the rudder and where it's in the shadows, there's no photograph that will have that sort of resolution or the various perspective I needed to see how the tiles are actually laid out and how they are in reference to each other. That's the resolution of detail that I needed in order to build a model to this level of care and attention.
So, John, we talked about your approach with scribing. I'm going to ask, a question I have to ask that might be, how can I phrase this? I'm going to ask something obvious and potentially insulting. So all of this hard work, you know, the manual nature of scratch building, the finesse, the personal connection, I'd say, with an intricate piece like this, especially as you look around, you know, the engines and other aspects of the shuttle as well. Is there at some point where, I guess, first off, it seems like you've made the decision to go with actual scratch building, I should say, physical styrene, scribing scratch building as opposed to scratch printing. That said, I'd love to address that on kind of the methodology behind that. And then the next follow-on question would be, do you see 3D entering the picture at any point as you look at some maybe more complex substructures that could be better accomplished with 3D or more accurate? So what are your thoughts there?
I'm going to address the second part of the question first. I think 3D printing has always been on the back of my mind when it comes to this project, especially for areas that are more repetitive. For instance, the 3 space shuttle main engines. If I were to detail one of them, it's not so bad. If I want to do 3, it's probably not too bad either, but to do them consistently, I mean, anyone can hand carve out a single track link, right? But to do it, like literally 100 times. So I think for the space shuttle, there's always a chance, especially when it comes to the interior, which I'm seriously thinking of doing, opening up the payroll bay and showing off, the inside of the space shuttle. That may come in handy. But I think this is an aside, but I think every model builder needs to find themselves in the sense that they need to know what really makes them happy. No, not just what they are good at, not just what they can actually achieve technically and otherwise, but what actually makes them happy. If I'm not happy doing this, I would have given up a long time ago. And I think everybody practice their hobby differently. I think that shows in various ways. Some people just like to collect. Some people just like to glue things together. Some people just like to paint. Some people actually like to scratch build. There is this Facebook page, Scale Model Art, US Navy Scale Model Art, I think. The guy scratch builds everything out of styrene, and it's incredible. Ben Shoemaker, he's doing a 3D printed 48 scale Vigilante, and that's what makes him tick. And I think that diversity is very, very important, not just for ourselves, but for us to support each other in our model building pursuits. So for me, I talked about earlier how I needed to struggle with myself as a model builder to find the limit of how I want to finish my model and how much aftermarket I want to put on, how much weather I want to have on my models. I think I had to come to that point as well when it comes to incorporating different techniques, in this case, specifically hand scratch building versus 3D. Because this is such a passion project with a heavy nostalgic slant. I wanted to infuse as much of my passion for craftsmanship, good old hand builds craftsmanship into the model. And I mean, it probably would have been a lot easier for me to just CAD this thing up and press print, than for me to scratch build a set of tiles, 500 of them, to know that half of them are probably, not as clean as I wanted to the first time, or, like that. I've done this before where I scratch build a field of tile to realize that the relation to the next field of 500 tile is not optimal. I have to do adjustments there. I have to fix tile patterns. But I think that's what I enjoy. I enjoy just sitting down at my workbench, just in the quietness or with a podcast going, and just work with my hands. And there's something that I really, really appreciate that. I think I've come to, how you look at your mom and you're like, how do you cut that julienne so perfectly? And then when your mom is Asian and you're like, you use a cleaver. You don't use like a fancy French knife. How do you cut the julienne so perfectly? She's just like, I just do it. That ability where the years of dedication and honing of the craft shows up in the final product. I think that really resonates with me. When I see a very, very cleanly done piece of work that's handcrafted or hand sculpted or hand scratch built, that inspires me. That makes me happy. And I think when I'm able to achieve that myself, that makes me proud. years ago when black box cockpit sets were around, they used to post work in progress of, hey, this is the master that we're working on for the next release we have. And you look at it, and it just oozes craftsmanship, right? It just oozes competence, and not just in how that person can craft and scribe and to carve, but the knowledge and the understanding of the material, whether you should use styrene for this bit or a solder wire, or you should use one type of cement versus the other. I think that innate background knowledge that comes from just dedication and years of working your craft to the excellence that you really needed to get to attain that result. I think that is a bit of a lost art these days. I think it's not something that, even though it's not practiced as much now, I think people still have as much, if not more, appreciation for. It's just very different when you walk into an art gallery and there is that hand carved piece of work by Leonardo da Vinci versus something that is CNC machine out of a piece of wood, right? Like I'm not disparaging anyone here, but it's just different.
And that brings us back to the comment that your wife made to you, right? Which is like, you're known for this model that's not finished. Well, you're known for this model that's not finished because people see that you're taking a needle and you're turning this horrible 40-year-old sort of kind of maybe in the ballpark model, and you're actually turning it into a work of art.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm not sure it's a work of art yet, but I think that you brought up a very good point in terms of how I communicate what I'm actually doing. Not just the space shuttle, maybe on some of my other builds as well. I try to tell a story with every post that I give, and I try to do so visually as well as in writing. I will usually provide images that are sort of a progression of the work I'm doing. I will start with what the subject used or the kit used to be and where I want to get it to, and then how I get there and the tools that I use, and the positioning of my needle. And if I scribe a line, there will be a burr, and the next picture will be me taking a sandpaper or a knife to address that burr and to finesse it to a point where I can prime it, and now it looks something completely different. And then at the end, I'll show you the before and after product. I think that storytelling is very important for me because I don't do video, right? So for me to be able to communicate how I'm achieving a certain result, or how to hopefully help others to do the same, that to be able to visually tell that story becomes all the more important. So that's what I found myself to be a lot more cognizant of, both my Instagram as well as Facebook posts.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but no, I definitely see that, and I see it mostly. I love your page. Don't get me wrong. I love it completely, and I love the way you describe the exact process in your page. And I'm thinking of the F-16 model you're working on, the 148 scale Tamiya. I think it's the E or F. I can't remember. The A, yeah, whatever. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you show the cockpit line, the line that's right behind the cockpit. On the top of the model, and you show how you scribe how it goes together, and you see that you show a picture of it before with the line with the light on it. You can see the line perfectly, and you show how you that process, and that design, that step by step process that you show is it, for a guy like me who's I'm working my way into that kind of area. I want to be able to do more. And when you show that process like that, it is fantastic for someone like me who can see, okay, this is how he did it. He did this, he did this, he did. And your little call outs on the picture are another great idea. I've seen that before, but you do it so well. And, I love your space shuttle. We all do. But I think some of your better work is being done now on your F-16. And that's just my personal thought. But, explain to us that process where how you came up with that and how you designed that work and how you go forward with it.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate how you noticed those. I think something that a lot of the modelers are coming to realize is if I branch out from what I'm used to, especially into other genres, sometimes it makes me a better modeler, and sometimes that also makes me a better communicator. So I actually have not been doing this until very recently, in the past couple of years, after I started looking into the Gunpla community. So if you look at especially this is especially prevalent on Instagram.
Right.
They'll have a photo of before and after adjacent to each other.
Yeah.
It's very, very obvious the amount of work that they've done. And I haven't been seeing that as much in at least the aircraft modeling community, as much that compare and contrast of what was before and what was at least not, in a single post or in a single photo adjacent to each other. So I think having that as a foundation in any sort of communication for what I'm attempting to do or what I've done is a good framework for the discussion. So I think for me to practice towards that, I needed to step away from what I have been doing traditionally, which is more of the this is what I want to build. So I will show a kid with the sprues, and then here's what I've done, which is like, hey, look, a fuselage has been joined together with primer on it, but then showing nothing in between. So it definitely takes practice. It takes more deliberate thought to communicate to others, but also to myself. How when you're trying to practice any sort of physical activity, you have to be very deliberate in breaking down, hey, this is what I'm going to do next. This is what I'm going to do next. This is what I'm going to do next. Once I have that knowledge down in the back of my mind, then I slow down my build process. This is when my build goes from a 5-minute exercise into a 20-minute exercise, because now I have to take a picture every 30 seconds. I have to take a lot of pictures. Maybe when I have the subjects posed this way, you'll communicate a certain ideology. If I have my subject posted that way, then I will be able to use the lighting a little better. An example would be something that really, really bothers me on my model is whether a contour on a subject is continuous. For aircraft, contours are extremely important. And sometimes the part doesn't fit well, or a panel light isn't as well done, and then you get like a disjoint in the contours. So I will hold it up to the light. I'll hold it up to a light in such a way that where if the model is just correctly backlit, you can see how well the contours are done or not. And to be able to photograph a model with the proper backlight to show that, it's a little tricky sometimes. So over the years, I've come to not just improved on my photography, I've improved on my lighting in my photo setup, and also how to hold my model, how to position my camera, how to post-process my imagery. I think all of that are different individual skills that have to come together that I had to learn over the years in order for me to communicate with a single photo or two what I'm trying to convey. So all that just to say that I've been challenged by stepping out of my comfort zone of not just not looking at the aircraft community circle for how we communicate ideas, but also how I would go about using technology, in this case photography equipment as well as photo editing software, to be able to generate the imagery and the annotated diagrams that I would need to be able to help me communicate what I'm doing.
I'm flabbergasted. It's great. I love how you're talking, but I love how you're bringing all aspects of it together, and the way you do this, how you talk about photography, how you talk about the angles, and how you're bringing it all together. And it's so, excuse the word, but engineering, because I work with engineers every day, and you guys are, it's a great thing to see when you guys have a love and a passion for something. What you do, you have a love and a passion for this, and you can very much tell. And I love how your aircraft are phenomenal. They are, and I don't know if that's if that's because it's the engineer in you, or it's the background from where you're located and the people that you were around for all those years, as John and you talked about earlier, because you were throwing out names there that are just like massive in this hobby. And, it's such an honor, and it's so neat for me I'm not an aircraft guy. And I see guys like you, and I see what you produce, and it's phenomenal. As I looked at your F-16s pictures, I was looking at the rivet patterns in the panels, and I'm like, how does that happen? And it's just, I have the kit, and I opened up the kit and looked at it, and I'm like, no. That's just, I'm very impressed. And it's very impressive to see how you take this hobby to a different level than 99% of us. I mean, you create more with a piece of sheet styrene and a scriber than 99% of the people do with whatever they're working. And it's impressive to see.
Oh wow, that's quite that's quite a compliment. I'm not sure if I can accept all of that, but I really appreciate that. Going back to just Toronto area proper, there's and going back to this gentleman John Wong that I mentioned, he's known to take Airfix pieces of shit, and he'll take frog kits, he'll take a bar of soap, and he would do something magnificent out of it. And that's the type of persona that I grew up around. Like people like Harvey Lowe, who I think he's one of the very few who has gotten like best aircraft, best ship, and best armor at various IPMS nationals. And they've inspired me in the technical work they do, but they also inspire me by the work that they do that are not appreciated. I'm going to digress into like recognition, right? So like there was a discussion about contests and what is recognized and what is not recognized. And I think a lot of what we do as model builders are not recognized or appreciated by others just because it's not our own child. I can spend 2 weeks or a month or 2 months on a cockpit of an F-16. And then on average, I think it's 5-10 seconds of people will stare into it before moving on to some other parts of the model, right? I think that's one thing, to actually do work that people will recognize, but to do work well where other people will not recognize when they even see it. If I go and I'm going to go back to panel lines because we're talking about panel lines. What I aim to achieve with scribing and panel lining is to reproduce one that is consistent with the rest of the kit, because that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that my work is basically seamless and disappears into the background, so that you will not look at a finished model and know that there is a panel line that is being added. So if you look at this, like I know where that joint is. It's sort of blended in, right? It's not as obvious. So if I do something really well like this, let's say if Mr. John Wang goes and take a piece of aircraft, Airfix aircraft model kit from the 1950s and does work like this, unless you know how the kit came out of the box you're going to put this down beside a contemporary Tamiya kit with kit panel lines, and they're going to look the same in terms of like how exquisite the surface details are, right? So in that sense, your handiwork may not be appreciated or recognized, but that's okay, because this is what I want to do on my model. This is the excellence that I want to pursue. And I think to have being around model builders who have honed their craft in such a humble way as to not be overtly showy, or to do it so well that unless you know what they've gone through, you're not going to appreciate. No, it's that instills in me a sort of integrity in my model that I can be content with and comfortable with. And I now don't have to compare myself with other model builders. I don't have to compare myself with I may enforce myself to achieve so that I can win an award, for instance, or I can be the most detailed out there of all the options that I can get. I don't have to use the most detailed aftermarket sets, for instance. I can hand scratch build something that in ways that is my own. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but
no,
it's that
absolutely. I mean, you don't need any external validation because you're getting the validation that you need because it's fueled by your passion.
Exactly.
I mean, I love, this is really fascinating. I want to go back to this picture of your F-16 and blending that infamous seam on the Tamiya kit. And you talked about storytelling. Well, you've used in this picture, you've got parts of the model that are in gray and parts of the model that are in white. And so not only are you presenting a really nice, detailed, sharp photograph, but you're telling the story to the viewer who, like you said, they may not know what they're looking at, but because of the way that you're presenting it and you're telling that story, now all of a sudden they can see what you see. You're not only sharing your model, you're sharing your passion. You're saying, let me present it to you in a way that you can see what it is I'm looking for.
Yeah, the vision. You're sharing the vision is what I'm seeing too. What Scott said 100%, and you're making 100% sense. You're not rambling. It's great.
You guys are too kind. I really appreciate it, and I'm very, very thankful for the community that I have. Here in Toronto area. I mean, to your point, it could actually be the water here. We do have a nuclear power plant. It's not far up the street, so I don't know. We could all be mutants of some sort.
Have you been bit by any radioactive spiders or bed bugs or anything?
Not yet, but I'm looking at a spider right now in my basement. So.
His scriber is tipped with radium, and he nicked himself one day. So John, we just showed that picture of that nice crisp panel line. This is a very tactical question, actually, I've had in my mind since you shared the photo. So going back to the shuttle, you show, you beautifully scribed and built that forward, OCS module, essentially, that's going to slot into the forward nose section.
Yeah, the RCS, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The RCS. Reactor control system.
Yeah, the RCS system. So I got to ask, how are you going to blend it? Because right now you have it popped in and there's, okay. So you started doing it already?
No, it's not. It's a little peep together.
Okay. Because I was just like, there's so much scribing and there's, dare I say, misalignment there. I'm like, how are you going to I guess, blend it in and then scribe? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So everything fitted well initially, right? Because this full RCS section was actually part of, each fuselage half. So I know that it's going to go back well. I didn't change the contour of this piece, so it will go back well. It's just that right now it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
And also that large seam line over there, there is actually a large gap on the actual space shuttle. It's filled in by ceramic rope that seals it. So I do envision that I will have to address it in some ways. But I mean, it's not the first time I have to rescribe hundreds of tiles. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. This is definitely a judgment call of, do I prescribe some details or do I not before I have a chance to install and blend things together. The tiles are so intricately related to each other, just from adjacent standpoint. It's unless I have all the tiles drawn out with pencil on an area or a piece like this, I don't put a scriber to it because I would definitely have to change it. A single tile that is offset by just a little bit can offset something that is 10 tiles down in terms of its like positioning or aspect ratio, and it just look wrong.
Butterfly
to me
effect,
anyway. Yeah, for sure. So this is. So this is why, if you look at a little bit further up on the actual fuselage joint, there are large areas of those areas of lines are already marked in for where the blankets are. I just didn't describe the interior.
Yeah,
I had to pre-position the blankets so that I know that all the other details relative to those blanket positions will be correct.
Yeah,
it's tricky.
So what's interesting is we talk a lot about the scribing and the construction aspect of it. I'd love to maybe look into the future and talk about painting it, and more specifically, all those damn decals. How many decals for each tile are you going to have to put on this?
One decal for each tile.
And how many is that? Like thousands, tens of thousands?
There's like 25, 30,000 tiles on the shuttle. The blankets themselves also have serial numbers, so the blankets will have tiles as well.
That's aggressive.
You are a madman, and I mean that in the absolutely the best way possible. You are a madman.
It really sucks because the tiles are just small enough to be a pain, but not small enough that you can
get away with it.
Yeah, you just have to, like, visually. If you look at how the colorations are, you can't
get away from it. Yeah.
Can't fake it. If you want to do it right, if I really want to do it right and bring out the essence of how the space shuttle look, like this picture, for instance, like if I just put decals or if I just pencil in the tile lines, because there are people that draw in their panel lines as opposed to scribing, you wouldn't get the natural lighting over here that shows up the effect so well, right? Like that's why you need to take advantage of it. I can just paint this thing white, and the lighting itself will be able to bring out the character of the thermal protection system. If I add weathering on top of it, then you'll be even more realistic. So I'm just gonna take this one step at a time. I'm probably gonna have to do a lot more experimentation.
That's why I brought it up, because we see the phenomenal scratch work that we've talked about the whole episode, but I think sometimes people fail to realize that it ain't over until it's over, in a sense. And the next major step is detail painting and, marking every single tile.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's, the weathering is going to be very interesting. It's discoloration, but discoloration that happens in a lot of layers.
Yeah.
Discolorations that happen via the interaction of the surface geometries. So if you look at, I don't have a picture here right now, but if you zoom into, say, like the tiles on the nose, like the chin over there are little streaks on the actual space shuttle that are weathering not from paint or dirt, but they're the
re-entry
gaps
burns?
between the re-entry burns come from the gaps between the tiles themselves that gets deposited on the adjacent tiles.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's characteristics like that will be a little tricky for me to be able to replicate, because I literally have to go in with a paintbrush and draw like re-entry burn streaks for like 25,000 tiles.
Yeah.
and John too, I mean, I think it's interesting, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll also have a unique dynamic between newer tiles, older tiles, newer thermal blankets, older thermal blankets, because they don't all get replaced. They're individually inspected and then replaced as needed, correct? Or am I incorrect?
Yeah,
there?
You're correct. Yeah. So you have field of darker black tiles, for instance, that are newer. You have field of lighter colored black tiles that are older. The older tiles have yellow markings that came from the Palmdale factory. The newer ones have white markings, for instance. So it's details like this that I really like putting. So I'm going to digress a little bit more. I really like putting details in there that you kind of have to know to appreciate. It's almost like Easter eggs.
Yep.
Right, like the CF18 I finished recently. I put a little Tim Hortons mug.
Timbits, I love it.
Timbits. Like nobody knows what Timbits are until you've had a box of Timbits, right?
Yep.
So like for me to be able to put like tile markings that are yellow versus white and at the exact same, I'm just hoping that one day some guy that's worked on a shuttle or flew on a shuttle will look at a part of the space shuttle and be like, yeah, those tiles really are yellow and white, because I was standing right there by the hatch and they were white on this one and like yellow on the other one, that makes me smile, because that makes me feel like they understand how much care and attention I put into my models.
You can see the yellow on the rear on this picture that you have from the Smithsonian. You can see some of that discoloration. Like this.
There you go.
Yeah. So you see like the forward roll, there's sort of a frame around the elevons.
Right.
And then there's a forward roll of tiles. Yeah, right. These are little white arrows that point forward.
Oh, wow.
Tile is forward.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you ever realized it before. I haven't until maybe 6 months ago. I was researching stuff for the wings. I'm like, wow, those are new decals I have to like get drawn up for these areas.
So it's kind of stupid proof. So you know exactly which way to put the things on, because evidently someone put them on the wrong way. So they have to put arrows on them now to make sure they go the right way. So, I mean, that's great. I love that.
Speaking about a little bit of humor, maybe, John, have you ever seen the 747 that transports the orbiter have you ever seen it up close?
Yeah, like black side down.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the mounts for the orbiter. Somebody put black side down.
Like black side of the space shuttle down.
Yeah.
It's
this is great.
I love stuff like that. If I were to build, I'm not building a 72nd scale 747, but if I were to, I will put that in there just for shit and giggles.
John, we've talked about the exterior a lot. You've hinted at the interior. How much depth are you going to go into? Are you going to do the cargo bay and the cockpit, or what are your thoughts there in terms of showing off what's inside the shuttle?
The hardest part is to decide what mission I want to do, because they're all different.
Yeah.
It's most likely going to be a post-Columbia flight, because I want to do the OBSS, the orbital boom sensor system. So for those that don't know, the space shuttle has an arm, a robotic arm called the Canada arm. It's on the left side, so the port side of the cargo bay. Since Columbia, they've essentially repurposed another arm to be installed on the right-hand side, and that gets picked up by the first arm. Now you have an extra long arm with a sensor on the tip of the second arm that essentially has a set of scanners, like laser scanners and whatnot, that goes around and checks all the tiles for good condition before they attempt re-entry. So I want to do that arm. I want to do that boom system just because I work with a few engineers that have worked on it back in their days. So it'll be a nice tribute to them. Yeah. So every mission is different in terms of its cargo layout, cargo consistency. So I want to be able to decide on what I want to do in terms of the interior. That won't add another 20 years to my build time frame, hopefully. But I mean, cockpit is pretty simplistic. It's pretty small. The windows are pretty small, so you can't really see into it. So the cockpit should be not too big of a deal, hopefully. I don't think you can even see the instrument panels once it's all put together.
So I don't know if we've explicitly addressed it, but I certainly see pictures on here. You mentioned Discovery. Is there a specific bird that you're doing?
Yes, it's Discovery. And because I've been working on this model for 2-3 years now, like in earnest, there are posts going back probably a year and a half that talks about the specifics of Discovery that I've implemented on this model in terms of tile layout and whatnot that makes it unique from the other orbiters.
We're looking for listeners. We're looking at a cockpit picture, and John is intending to scratch build all of the little knobs as well. He just hasn't said it yet.
It's just amazing. I mean, just again, listeners, please make sure you go to Scale Scriber and look at John's work and look at his photo gallery, and then you can pick your jaw up off of the floor like we're doing. So that's a great way to, as you're listening to this podcast, kind of get some great perspective.
You guys are way too kind. Way too kind.
We just know good work when we see it. We know great passion when we see it. I mean, you need to do like, I would pay a lot of money to have you make a presentation on this, like show all of these photos, show your references, and then show your work. And I mean, these stories, I mean, this interview can go 16 hours and we wouldn't even scratch the surface of, kind of what we're seeing here.
You need to do a book, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
Man,
but
work that is just carry all the information into a book.
says the guy that's going to hand apply how many decals to his model.
But at least it's all the same thing, right? It's like mindless work. If you try to curate a book, that's real work.
Yeah.
And plus, if I want to do a book, now I have to see if I can actually get a license and publish the photo. This is social media, right? So it's the Wild West. So I can just download the photo from someone's Flickr on a space shuttle, annotate it up, and post it here.
Well, I mean, we can spend all day on this, John, but I just wanted to, I mean, you mentioned to me in our phone call the other day that you need a break from the shuttle, so you decided to hop on kind of what JB would call a slammer build. So you pull out an F-18 Hornet, and 9 months later, you've got a completed model. So, obviously you're working on this 16. What else is maybe on your bench for the future? And, what's kind of, what else is in the queue?
Oh man. So did you mention that, previously that I have a problem with not finishing models? It's, you guys noticed the trend. The CF-18 was from my Shelf of Doom, and so is this F-16. So I've been thinking recently that I actually have not started a brand new model kit in probably 5 years. I don't actually remember how it feels like to open up a model kit that I just bought, that will cut open the bags and start snipping at the screws. I don't remember how that feels.
Yeah, John, have you ever heard of a concept called out of the box?
Yeah, I have. Well, I mean, the parts started coming out of the box, but they tend to go somewhere. They tend to go down a rabbit hole. I just take them out of the box, I just like find a rabbit hole in my backyard and just like throw them in there. But yeah, like the standing joke among some of my model friends is that I'm incapable. I'm physically incapable of building something out of the box. It's so easy, right? You put together an ejection seat, and you're just like, I'll just spend 5 minutes with some epoxy putty. There goes some in scratch build seatbelts, and another 5 minutes. There are some scratch build ejection seat pull rings, and look, I have some photo etch I bought from Ennis that has buckles I can put on there. And next thing you know, your seat is no longer out of the box. And if I try to join two parts together, I'll just so I have needle. I'll just add a few more rivets on this panel, and and it just snowballs from there, eh? So,
well, let's talk about maybe like outside of your comfort zone. I mean, do you ever have a desire to like do a vignette or paint a figure? You mentioned that you've got at least a passing interest in Gunpla. I mean, is there something that may be outside of your aerospace/space interest area that you might be diving into at some point?
Oh yeah, for sure. I grew up with Gunpla. Actually, it's my first foray into scale modeling or hobby of model building, and I've been trying to get back a little bit more recently. By getting back, I mean I picked up some kits like a year ago. I touched it for like two weeks and I put it back down. But it's something that I hope that I will get back into it one day. It's just such a antithesis to the genre of aircraft modeling. You know, there's a lot of from a technical standpoint, there is a lot of techniques and implementations and the way to go about painting parts before, after things go together. It's a little like, you'll paint things more after things go together in the armor world and the aircraft world. In the Gunpla community, there's a lot of tools, for instance, and materials and painting products that are geared towards that side of the hobby that I think I would benefit from learning and exploring with, in the same way that like Vallejo or Warhammer are more geared towards brush painting, for instance, speaking from a paint and finish standpoint. Yeah. So I think from an accuracy standpoint or authenticity standpoint, there is actually a lot more creativity involved in building Gunpla, because it's just what it is, right? It's fantasy. It's mecha. It encourages people to be a lot more individual and be creative towards how they will execute a certain subject matter. So I think that's something that I would like to step my toe into in the near future. It's scary. Every time I attempt something new in hobby or at work or in my personal life, it's scary, but it's also fun, right? It's like a muscle that you don't practice, like being able to learn something new that I'm not good at. It keeps me humble and keeps me grounded.
Doing the scribing work that you're doing with a needle. I mean, scribing is literally like why I don't do more aircraft, because it's so hard to do. And yet anyway, I would love to see you get more creative and see some of your Gunpla and some of your figure painting and everything. I think you probably would, knowing you, it's going to be amazing.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I think, if I were ever to get into more Gunpla or figure painting, I would also need to add a whole new paint line to my repertoire because I don't have anything that's conducive to actual brush painting. I've been looking at some of the AK Gen 3 stuff. I think it's really good for brush painting. That's what I've been hearing and seeing. So I wouldn't mind dipping my toes more into that.
Yeah, John. So great point there. So real quick with AK 3rd Gen, they are great paints. I think you could do the same with Vallejo. They're almost, dare I say, interchangeable in a sense. So yeah, try it, experiment, and we'll have to connect you with Cobra Paw. He's a great supporter of the pod. He's like Gunpla master, wouldn't you say, Scott? He's good with it.
Yeah, so definitely. He's doing a buddy build with Rick Lawler. I don't know if you ever watch Rick's propaganda channel, but Rick is an armor builder and he has elbowed him into the Gunpla community. Nice. It's great. But yeah, Josh is a absolutely great Gunpla builder from Seattle. So shout out to him. But yeah, check him out and check out Rick's build if you get a chance.
Awesome. I will. Yeah. You know what? Like, I'm sorry. I'm really, really thrilled to see the explosion of Gunpla or the receptiveness of Gunpla in I guess the Western Hemisphere. For us kids that grew up, at least I grew up part of my life building Gunpla, and it was, it was not a surprise for me to open up a kit and see a sprue of 3 or 4 different mixed colors that pre-injected together with each other, right? And still fit with extreme precision. That was unheard of for a lot of the, I guess, more traditional modeling folks.
Now, come on, John, you remember Matchbox?
Matchbox, yes, I remember. I remember throwing those into the bonfire. Great kindling material.
Oh man, you remember the different color? They do like 3 or 4 different color sprues: gray, green, brown.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they used to put them out in bags as well, right? Bag kits.
Yeah. But the Matchbox was a big, I want to say 70s, probably into the 80s, brand. I'm sure Harvey Lowe's built his fair share. Probably has still a bunch left.
Yeah.
But, going back, speaking of checking things out, John, if our listeners want to find you, tell us again where we can find you online.
On Instagram and Facebook. My handle is Scale Scriber, one word, at Scale Scriber. And I usually duplicate my posts on Facebook and on Instagram. Just I know that some people prefer one platform versus the other. I'm on social media. Feel free to hit me up, send me a message. I try to respond as punctually as I can, and love to hear from the folks. And thank you so much for the plug.
Yeah, I look forward to hopefully Madison in 2024. I think you mentioned Texas probably wouldn't happen, but love to see you maybe hit you at a Nats, and maybe the three of us can get up to a Heritage Con and bump into you up there, meet you in person, and can't wait to see what these models look like to the naked eye. Cameras are great, but models always look better in person, in my opinion. So
yeah, thanks. You guys ever come up? Drinks on me.
There you go.
That sounds great. We would have been at Heritage Con this year. Unfortunately, it just fell on the same weekend as the local Colorado show out here. Yeah. So, but hopefully next year we can deconflict that, because I would love to get back there.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back.
That's a dream show for me. That's one of my bucket list shows, just to see some of the aircraft there too. So I can't want to go.
And we'll take a picture where we both know each other. And
with the same crew, right?
Yeah. Not want to shiv me, who the hell is this guy?
We just look the same, but all of us have a few more gray hairs.
Maybe a few extra pounds.
Yeah, there you go, right?
It sounds great, John. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been great conversations, guys.
That was a lot of fun talking to John. Check him out, Scale Scriber, on Facebook and also on Instagram. His work is amazing. You can check out, we discussed a lot of photos of the shuttle in that interview. You can check those out over at his Facebook page.
Are you a member of the Plastic Posse Facebook page? You should be. We have lots and lots of friends there, and they're always uploading pictures and questions for the group, pictures of their builds, questions on how to attack new projects. And it's a lot of fun, some great interaction. You should all give it a try. Remember that you can send your feedback and suggestions to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. I think we're ready for another discussion. JB, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Doug. We'll keep this one brief because we've certainly gone on pretty long for this episode, but this is still related to the IPMS Nationals. And if you haven't been to the Nats, that's totally fine, because this relates to all shows. And I posed a question online around, why do people go to model shows? And the hashtag I'd love for people to use is why I go. And the whole intent of this question is really to understand and highlight the true importance of the model show or model convention, the exhibition, the display. And, there's been a lot of commotion online, as we've hinted at before in the show, and certainly you can find it on Facebook. But I think it's really important that we don't forget why we go. And I asked this question online, and we got some fantastic responses. I'd like to highlight a few, and then I'd love to go around the room just for a brief statement on why you go from my co-hosts. And then ultimately, I want to end with a question that might be a little interesting to know the answer to. And we have a couple proof points to show, how something could look. So I'd love to highlight a few people that contributed to this discussion on Facebook. We've certainly had a lot of responses and just a lot of positive feedback. I want to start with Martin Holst, hashtag why I go. I only recently restarted the hobby after a long pause. At first, I was a classic solitary modeler, and that will always be a part of who I am. I think we can all agree to that. In 2022, I intended to go to SMC, but COVID intervened. Later that year, more or less the spur of the moment, I decided last minute to go to the National IPMS show in Hutton. I was awestruck. Not only a huge amount of great models to admire, but I learned that it was super easy to engage other folks and talk models. This seems to be our universal language, and I loved it. I don't yet have all these great friend pics, but I'll leave you with the first image that caught my eye when I entered the building. At that point, I knew I was sold. And Martin shared an awesome picture of the show with a bunch of people, and he says, "Cheers from Holland." That's just one example. A few more I'd love to highlight and then pass around the room is Winston Gold. Here's why #WhyIGo. The friends, both old and new, that have a common interest and spend time catching up. I also look forward to the works of art that are on display, whether beginner or master of their craft, from the 2023 AMPS International Convention at Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Thank you for that, Winston. Also highlight our good buddy iBones Models, #WhyIGo. This is from last year, but it's what gets me to go the next year. And it's just a picture of good friends. Lee Fogel contributed, Matthew Johnson, who we had the pleasure of hanging out with, MD Models, which is our good friend Martin Drayton, and then also JC Osborne. A special, got to highlight JC. He was a constant fixture at the IPMS NATS as well. Just a great friend, great supporter of the podcast, and we've known him for a very long time, and super grateful to meet him in person. I think we can all agree he was a little bit taller than what we expected. But, other folks that contributed as well as Jeremy Elliott, and a list goes on and on. I think I want to pull out some consistencies between these posts. They focus on the people. The images that they posted were not of models, but the friends that they had at the model show. So I think that's very interesting. I'd love to go around the room to get a brief input on why do you go? And then I'll end with that question. So with that, I'll start off with our guest. We're going to go out to the Pacific Northwest to start. Jim Bates, why do you go?
It's all been said. I go to hang out with my friends. I think I've mentioned this to you before, JB, that we all come to your house for Commies Fest. Commies Fest is a cool show, but it's just a small local show. But I'm there because you guys are all there. And it is awesome that we have this group of people we have fun with, and it's always growing.
Couldn't agree more. Aaron Kuck, why do you go?
I was thinking back to many years ago when I went to model shows and literally went in, never talked to anyone, looked at the show, left, went home, and was like happy. I was like, went to the vendor room, went saw the contests, and thought that was it. And I think now to the time I spent last year at Omaha and this year in San Marcos, and you could have never opened up the vendor room or the contest room, and I still would have had a blast. It's all about the friends. I really can't even imagine going to a show unless my friends are there now. It's just, that's what it's about. That's what it should be about. And it's amazing that there's this group of people that for, probably 360 days out of the year, I only see or talk to online, but then maybe a couple days out of the year, we get together and it's like we're brothers and have always been together. And it's just fantastic. And that's what I look forward to every year. That's what I have fond memories of from past years. This year, there's a big hole in my heart from our good friend, Ian. Can't do math and, is expecting a child. Should have thought of this 9 months ago, Ian. But, you were missed this year, but congratulations to you. As we might even have a young Ian on the way today, as far as we know, because they're due any time. But, not having him there was, it just was somewhat telling to me how close you all are to me, that, how much he was missed. And so that to me is everything. It's just the friendship.
1000%. Mike, why do you go?
It's absolutely the people. Whether it's, you guys that I've met and people I've known for a while, or even just sitting there at Steve's booth and talking to people, passing things on, making new friends. Huge. My airport buddies, Bruce and Evan and the voice of Bob, getting stuck in the airport and talking with them, as well as Radu. Just those things. The fact you get to meet people like Rick Lawler and talk with him. And then the next morning when you go down to where you've been working on stuff, there's a brand new sheet of balsa foam that says, "With love from Rick." Rick's gift to me was awesome. I don't want to even use it because just such cool moments with the people. I still like the vendors though, too.
Love it. We all love the vendors. Certainly my wallet does. With that, I'm going to go to the PPP host. Grant, why do you go?
Yeah, it's been said before. It's the friends. I think, seeing you guys, seeing everybody here, seeing all of our friends in the posse, seeing everyone. But I also think the big thing is making new friends, the meeting the new people there, talking to people, seeing the excitement, seeing the joy, seeing the kids there that are, some are standoffish, some are not, some are very vibrant, some are not, and just seeing that and, remembering myself as that age and, with my dad and stuff. And, it's such a great situation when you can post a question like this and you don't see a single model. You don't see anything like that. All you see is pictures of guys just hanging out and girls. And that's what it's about. It's the friendship.
100%. I think I might get the same answer, but I got to go to Doug.
I go for the weather. I mean, look,
There's always one.
there was Texas weather, there was Omaha weather, which was muggy and hot, and then we did Vegas in the middle of the summer 2 years ago. So, I go for the weather. Actually, I am a super introverted person. I don't really put myself out there much, but I got to the hotel on Tuesday evening about 2 hours before my room was supposed to be available to me. So I sent a message out on the Posse Facebook page and said, if anybody's here, I'm down sitting in near the lobby with my stuff. Then next thing I know, I ran into Mike and Steve Munsell and John Everett. Bruce Worrell comes down, and then we run into John Everett, and I end up in the bar with Bruce, and the Bradleys come over, and I'm sitting there shooting the breeze with them and others for 3.5, 4 hours. We just sat and talked. So definitely the people, just how welcoming it is, how good I feel. Because like I said, I'm an introvert, and I don't feel that way. I don't feel out of place when I'm in this crowd. It's just a wonderful experience. It's a great feeling. And I was kicking myself. I mean, I wasn't kicking myself because I was there, but I'm at the show for less than an hour already saying, I can't believe I almost didn't come. I almost didn't go to this show. And I would have really, really regretted it.
Totally understand. Scott, our leader, why do you go?
Obviously the answer is the same. It's talking until 2:00 in the morning with Rob and Barry and Joan and Hank and Carrie and Dan Knopfel. It's getting to meet Lucy Colasanti. It's seeing Charlie Schaefer again. It's having friends like John Everett do what he did. And I mean, Aaron and Mike and you guys, I mean, I only get to see you once a year, and not only that, but we get to be in a place where we all speak the same language and we have something in common that's almost on a language level. Seeing Jim and John Vickus and Tim Nelson and on and on and on and on, just it's the people. I mean, by far, there's nothing as great as the convention is and was. There's nothing there that competes with, picking up Aaron from the airport and seeing him again after a year. That's where it's at. So anyway.
Hell yeah, I feel the same way. Why I go is exactly like all my co-hosts said here today. It's all about the people. There's nothing that compares to it. And I'd encourage everyone, go to a model show, go to a convention, go to a meeting. And don't be afraid to, reach out online as well. I think there's a component of this is maybe not only why I go, but why do I engage? You don't need to be physically there to find a friend. And that's been proven time and time again within the Plastic Posse group, where we connect in the virtual world. And then all of a sudden we're having Korean barbecue and going to a hobby shop on a weeknight outside, in Colorado. So I think I'd love to learn more. Please feel free to share. I think we pretty much maybe know the answer of everybody, but feel free to share your thoughts on why I go on our Facebook page. And with that, I do want to end with a single question. And this kind of culminates on a lot of things we've talked about, but I think it's a really important one. And one of us probably has the most unique experience with this, but I'd love to end the question, and I'd certainly ask our audience as well. It's obvious that we go to model shows for the people. So if the show was display only, would you still go to the convention? And I'd ask us maybe to go in reverse order, and I'll polish us off. Simple answer is fine. Scott, what do you think?
Absolutely.
Doug, your thoughts?
Yep, I'm there.
Grant?
100%.
Nukeman?
Definitely. And I have.
Heck yeah, man. Aaron?
100%. Yep.
And Mr. Bates, maybe you have a unique perspective on this, and maybe tell our listeners if they don't know already.
Not only would I go, I run one. So February in Seattle. Come on down to Model Mania. It'll be awesome.
Fantastic. And I fall in the same boat. Hell yes, emphatically. So listeners, we'd love to hear your feedback too. If the model show was display only, would you attend? With that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant to take us through the Posse merch.
All right, it's that time. If you would like to rep the Posse, you can check out all of our awesome merch at our Triple P Spring page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, and even the world famous PPP lounge trousers. You can order all your stylish Plastic Posse merch on the web at plastic-posse-podcast.creator-spring.com-. I would like to thank all the individuals out there sporting our stuff at Nationals this year. It was great to see all you guys walking around with the Plastic Posse tees. t-shirts.
You can also find our merch page at loungetrousers.com. Well, everybody, this has been awesome. I want to thank Aaron, Nukeman, and our good friend, Mr. Bates, in the Jim Bates special guest chair for joining us, most of them on very, very short notice. Thanks a lot for joining in. It was a lot of fun hanging out at Nats, and thanks for joining us for the episode. Please send us your feedback on what we've talked about. If you have a gripe, if you got a complaint, or you just want to comment on our discussions, plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. That's going to be a wrap on episode 75. I can't believe I just said that, of the Plastic Posse. We want to thank all of you for your support. We want to thank our awesome sponsors, AK Interactive, Tamiya USA, Bases by Bill, Tankcraft, Value Gear Details. Thank you so much for supporting us and what we do. Thank you to our Posse Patreons. Our get-togethers at Nats were awesome. Hopefully, if you guys aren't Patreons, consider joining that and come, hang out with us at a show. If you haven't joined the Plastic Posse group page on Facebook, please do. Interact with us. Give us your comments. Send us pictures of your build. That's how we interact with everybody. We'd love to see what you're working on. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. And I guess there's only one thing left to say. I'm going to turn it over to the master, Doug. Yeah, buddy.
If you'd like to support the Triple P and become a Plastic Posse Outrider, it's super easy. Just go on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast and set up a recurring donation there. These contributions help offset the cost of bringing the Triple P every 2 weeks. There are 3 different tiers of support, starting at just $1 a month, and you get some great benefits from it, from pictures to techniques and a little bit of everything in between. This is a chance to appear on the podcast and get exclusive PPP content as well. So let's recognize our amazing high-flying deputy marshals. These guys ride the range every month and do a great job. We have Dan Newman, Robert Bloker, Tyler Moore, Derek Post, Craig Flynn, Brian Kreiner, Scale Modelcraft, Ken Childress, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Tim Holm, Frank Perrone, The Voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Eidmill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric DeGleesh, Joe Porche, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kalahara, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Wakala, B-Cult 1911, John Everett, Josh Buck, Black Rifle Model Works, Thomas Bannock, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DD Scale Model Studio, Matthew Johnson, Jeremy Elliott, Meg Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knofel, and JC Osborne. Thank you, gentlemen.
Let's also recognize our excellent posse foremen. These foremen are outriders who give our deputy marshals a hand keeping fences mended and horses fed. Jeff, Eddie, Ross, George, Gary, Orff Models, Drew, Ross, Eric, Len, Cliff, Eric, Mike, Papa Steve, Logan, Red Beach One Studios, M Models, JV, Damon, Farron, Cody, Tim, Nukeman Mike, Greg, JAK, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul. What's the deal with iBones Models? Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Make Armor, Chris, Lee, and Jamie.
And of course, our Posse Outriders. We appreciate all of you, including Cameron Corliss and John Fluck. Thanks for joining. And please consider posting a review of the Triple P on the podcast platform that you use. Every 5-star review helps modelers find the Plastic Posse.
Scott, one more read before we're done.
Go for it.
I was just going to suggest check out the Plastic Posse Podcast YouTube channel, where you'll see reviews occasionally from people on the podcast and a Scale Canadian TV guy. Look for a new review this week. I don't know if it'll be Tamiya goodness or something Rubicon.
Whoa, that's a tease.
Teaser.
Thanks, you guys. Aaron, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much. Jim,
thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, adios.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey, folks.
Take care.